The bullet passed so close to her ear she felt the heat of it before she heard the crack. Glass exploded behind her. Lila Hart dropped to the marble floor of a mansion that was never hers, pressing her palm against a wound that wasn't there yet, because the man who'd come for her always made his promises real. 3 weeks ago, she was invisible. Tonight, a crime lord was killing men in her name, and she didn't know whether to run from him or toward him. If you make it to the end of this story, do me a favor. Drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from tonight. I want to see how far Lila's story travels. Now stay with me, because everything you're about to hear, it starts with a girl who learned how to disappear. The rain in Ashmont didn't fall so much as settle, like the city was exhaling something bitter it had been holding in all day. By the time the clock in the east wing of the Voss estate struck 11, the gravel driveway outside looked like wet slate, and the iron gates at the foot of the hill were closing behind a black sedan that no one on the staff had been told to expect. Lila Hart was on her knees in the library, scrubbing a wine stain that wasn't hers out of a rug that cost more than her mother's funeral. She'd been at it for nearly an hour. The stain had dried, and the housekeeper, Mrs. Delaney, had made it clear before going to bed that the rug was to be spotless by morning, or Lila could expect to have the cost taken out of her pay for the next 6 months. Mrs. Delaney had a way of saying things like that with a small, apologetic smile, as if she was sorry the world worked this way, and not her specifically. Lila had learned not to trust the smile. She dipped the cloth into the bucket again. The water had gone pink. She pressed down harder. Her hands were cracked at the knuckles. There was a small, old scar on the back of her left wrist, pale and shaped like a comma, that she never looked at directly anymore. She'd had it for 4 years. She remembered exactly how she got it, and she refused to remember exactly how she got it, and the two things lived in her at the same time without ever meeting in the middle. "You're still up!" Lila startled so hard the bucket tipped. Pink water slid across the hardwood toward the edge of the rug. "Oh, God, sorry." She scrambled to right it. A pair of polished shoes came into view, stopped just short of the spill. Lila kept her eyes on the floor. She already knew who it was. There was only one man in this house whose shoes didn't make a sound when he walked. "Sorry, Mr. Voss," she said. "I didn't hear you come in." "No one does," Adrian Voss said. He crouched, which she hadn't expected, and picked up the cloth she had dropped. He didn't hand it to her. He just held it, looking at it like he was trying to figure out what it was for. Lila risked a glance up. Adrian Voss was 38 years old and looked like a man who had never in his life been woken up by an alarm clock. His coat was dark and still damp at the shoulders. His hair was the color of wet ash. He had the kind of face that, on a stranger, you would have instinctively moved away from on a train, not because it was cruel, but because it was unreadable. And unreadable men in this city tended to be the ones who left other men in rivers. He set the cloth down on the edge of the bucket. "Delaney made you do this tonight?" "I offered," Lila said. "Did you?" "Yes, sir." He looked at her. She felt it. The look. Steady, brief, assessing, like he was checking the time on a watch. Then it passed, and he stood, and she could breathe again. "Leave it," he said. "Go to bed." "I can finish." Leave it, Lila." He said her name the way you'd set down something heavy. Careful. Like he wasn't sure of its weight. She'd worked in the Voss house for 11 months, and she wasn't sure he'd ever said her name out loud before tonight. He called her you when he needed her to bring him coffee. He'd called her the girl, once, to Delaney, when he thought Lila wasn't in the hallway. She'd preferred the girl. The girl didn't require anything of her. Lila did. "Yes, sir," she said. She gathered the bucket. She didn't look at him again. She walked out of the library with her back straight and her shoulders lower than they needed to be, the way she'd trained herself to walk in rooms with men in them. And it wasn't until she'd climbed 2 flights of service stairs and closed her door behind her that she realized she was shaking. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes, and did not cry. She'd stopped crying a long time ago. Crying was something you did when you believed, deep down, that someone was going to come. Lila didn't believe that anymore. Bob. Down in the library, Adrian Voss stood for a long moment over a pink stain on a dark rug and did not move. Then he turned, poured himself 3 fingers of something that was not for guests, and walked to the window. The rain was heavier now. Across the lawn, past the hedges, past the gate, Ashmont spread out in a low, glittering smear. The river, the bridges, the warehouses along Calder Street that belonged, on paper, to a shipping company that belonged, on paper, to a man who did not exist. Adrian owned most of what you could see from this window. He did not own the rain. He did not own the quiet. He did not own the woman 2 floors up who had just said "sir" to him as if he were something she had to survive. He took a slow sip. "Tell me something, Vincent," he said, without turning around. A man stepped out of the shadow by the doorway, not because he'd been hiding, exactly, but because Vincent Morel had a talent for being the last thing in a room anyone noticed. He was older than Adrian by a decade, heavier by 30 pounds, and had been Adrian's right hand since Adrian was 22, and didn't yet know what a right hand was for. "Yes, boss." "How long has she been here?" "Who?" "The maid. Hart." Vincent's pause was small, but Adrian heard it. Vincent's pauses were always small and always meant something. "Coming up on a year," Vincent said. "Hired last February." "By Delaney." "Yes." "References?" "Cleaned for a family out in Brighton Heights. Before that, a diner in... I'd have to check. Somewhere north." "Why?" Adrian didn't answer. He watched the rain. "Boss?" "Run her again," Adrian said. "Already clean. I ran her when she came on." "Run her deeper." Another pause. Longer this time. "Is there a problem?" "I don't know yet," Adrian said. "That's why I'm asking you to run her." Vincent nodded, the way he nodded when he was being asked to do something he didn't like but would do anyway. He'd been nodding at Adrian like that for 16 years. He'd stopped asking questions about it around year 4. "Anything specific?" Adrian took another sip. "Anyone looking for her? Anyone who might?" "Got it." "And Vincent?" "Yeah." Quietly, Vincent smiled just a little. "When do I do it loud?" He left. The door clicked shut. Adrian stood at the window until his glass was empty, which took a long time, and then he went upstairs and did not sleep. The next morning, Lila was up at 5. She was always up at 5. It was a thing she had done for so long that her body did it without her, the way some people woke to alarms and other people woke to babies. The mansion had 22 rooms, not counting the east wing, which was Mr. Voss's private floor and which no one but Delaney was allowed to enter. Lila was responsible for the downstairs, the parlor, the dining room, the hallways, the front sitting room where guests waited, the half-bath near the kitchen, the solarium. The solarium was her favorite. It was a room she was not supposed to love. It was full of plants she did not own, watered with money she would never earn. And at 8 o'clock every morning the sun came through the east-facing glass in a way that made the ferns turn silver at the edges. She could stand in the doorway with a dustcloth in her hand, and for 30 seconds she could feel almost like a person. This morning she did not stop to look at the light. She moved through her rounds with her head down. She didn't know why, except that she had not slept, and her body could feel Mr. Voss's voice still in the library downstairs, like a note held too long. "Leave it, Lila." She was in the dining room polishing silver when Delaney came in. Mrs. Delaney was in her early 60s, small and neat, with iron-colored hair pulled back so tight it looked like it hurt. She'd run this house for 19 years. Her husband had been the estate's groundskeeper, and when he died, Mr. Voss had not fired her, which in Delaney's mind was the single greatest act of mercy a man had ever committed. "Lila." "Ma'am?" "Mr. Voss is having guests tonight, a small dinner, 8 people." Lila's hand did not stop moving. "Yes, ma'am." "The Grayson party. Mr. Voss wants the blue dining set, the one with the silver rim." "Yes, ma'am." "And no rosemary on the lamb. Elena will remember, but remind her, Mr. Grayson's wife doesn't care for it." "Yes, ma'am." Delaney stood in the doorway a beat longer than she needed to. Lila felt her looking. "You're pale, girl." "I'm fine." "You sleep?" "Yes, ma'am." "Don't lie to me." "Boy, too." Lila looked up, finally. Delaney's face was exactly what it always was, a small, tight, closed thing. But her eyes, for just a second, were almost kind. "I'm fine, Mrs. Delaney." Delaney tapped the doorframe twice with her knuckle, which was what she did instead of goodbye, and left. Lila set down the silver. She looked at her hand. It was trembling, very slightly. She made it stop. The dinner was at 8. By 7:30, the house had been transformed. The chandelier in the front hall lit. The long table in the formal dining room dressed in cream linen, 8 places set, crystal catching the light and throwing it back in little fragments on the walls. Elena in the kitchen was swearing in 2 languages about a sauce. The driver had already gone to pick up the Graysons. Vincent was on the phone in the front parlor, his voice low, the kind of low that was not about privacy, but about habit. Lila was in the back hallway carrying a stack of folded napkins when Adrian found her. "Come here a moment." She stopped. She turned. She kept the napkins against her chest like a small white shield. "Sir." "Tonight." He was in a dark suit, no tie, his collar open 1 button. He looked tired in a way she hadn't noticed before, like a man who had been tired for years and had only just now remembered. "I need you on the floor, serving." "Mrs. Delaney usually—" "Delaney has a migraine," Adrian said. "She's laying down. She'll supervise from the kitchen." "Oh, have you done table service before?" "Yes, sir. At the house before. Sometimes." "Good." He watched her for a beat too long. She couldn't tell what he was looking at. Her face, her hands, the napkins. "There's a uniform in the pantry," he said. "Delaney left it for you. Black. Go change." "Yes, sir." Lila. "Sir, just bring the plates. Don't talk to the guests. If one of them talks to you, smile and say yes. Understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good." He turned to walk away, then he stopped. "And if something feels wrong tonight," he said, not looking at her, "anything, you find Vincent, not me." "Vincent. Are we clear?" She blinked. "Sir? Are we clear?" "Yes, sir." He nodded once and was gone down the hallway, and Lila stood there with a stack of napkins pressed against her chest and a feeling in her stomach like she'd swallowed a cold stone. She did not know what he meant. She knew exactly what he meant. Men like Adrian Voss did not say if something feels wrong, unless something, somewhere, was already wrong. She went to change. The Graysons arrived at 3 minutes past 8. Dennis Grayson was a shipping magnate, the legitimate kind, whose business had become increasingly dependent over the last 4 years on a particular class of import that moved through a particular set of docks that, on paper, belonged to a shipping company that belonged, on paper, to a man who did not exist. He was a heavy man, with a handshake that he used like a signature. His wife Maribel was blonde and thin and wearing a dress that cost as much as Lila's yearly wages, and she had the kind of laugh that started out polite and ended 3 drinks in, sharp as a hook. There were 3 other couples. Lila did not learn their names. She was not supposed to. She served. She had told Adrian the truth. She had done this before. Once, in another life, at another long table, with different silver and a different man at the head of it who had called her by a different name. Her hands knew the rhythm. Enter from the left, clear from the right. Never let the guests see your face unless they looked for it. Never look at the host. She did not look at Adrian. Adrian looked at her. He did not mean to, or he did, and he was not prepared to admit it. He kept up with the conversation. Dennis Grayson was boring the table with a story about a yacht in Monaco, and everyone was laughing politely, and Adrian was making the small, civilized sounds of a man who was listening. But every time Lila entered the room with a plate, he found her. She was small. He hadn't realized how small she was. In her work clothes, she moved through the house like a thing folded up on itself. In the uniform, which fit her badly at the shoulders, he could see the line of her collarbone, the line of her jaw, the way her hair was pinned back so tightly it pulled at her temples. She was careful. She was so careful it hurt to watch. Every plate set down without a sound. Every step angled away from the guests. Every pass of her hand across the table made at exactly the distance that would not draw the eye. She had been in his house for 11 months. He had looked at her, he understood now, exactly twice. Once when Delaney had introduced her. Once in the library last night. Dennis Grayson was saying something, and I said, "Marcus, for Christ's sake, if you want a boat that size, you're going to have to learn how to—" Maribel Grayson, on her 3rd glass, reached out to take a bread roll from the basket Lila was holding. Her bracelet, heavy, gold, loose, caught on the edge of the linen, and as she pulled her hand back, the bracelet came with it. The linen came with it, and a water glass on the table tipped and emptied across Maribel's lap. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Lila moved without thinking. She set the basket down. She pulled a folded cloth from her apron. She reached across to blot the spill. Maribel Grayson said, "Sharp, don't touch me." The table went quiet. It was the kind of quiet that happens in a restaurant when a child starts crying, or in a church when someone's phone goes off. A silence that is not a true silence, but a held breath, everyone waiting to see what someone else is going to do about it. Lila pulled her hand back. She took a half step back from the table. Her face did something Adrian had not seen a face do in years. It closed. Not down, not in shame. Closed, locked. The way a storefront closes at the end of the night. Shutters down. Lights out. No one home. "I apologize, ma'am," she said. Quiet even. "I'll bring another cloth." "It's fine. Honestly, it's fine." Maribel's laugh had come out already. Too loud, too quick. The kind of laugh you make when you realize the room has turned. "I'm sorry, darling. You startled me." "Of course, ma'am." Lila turned. She walked toward the kitchen. Her steps were measured. She did not hurry. She did not slow. Adrian set his fork down. He was not a man who noticed small things as a rule. He had people for small things. His entire life, from the moment he was 24 years old and watched his father be buried in a cheap suit at a cheap cemetery on the wrong side of the river, had been an exercise in not noticing small things, because small things could get you killed and large things could be handled. He noticed this. He noticed the way the maid's shoulders did not flinch. He noticed the way the maid's hands did not shake. He noticed the way the maid had said, "I apologize, ma'am," in the exact tone of a woman who had said it 1,000 times before, to 1,000 other women in 1,000 other dining rooms, and who had learned, somewhere along the way, that if you said it flat enough, the word stopped meaning anything, and then it couldn't hurt you anymore. He had heard that tone before. He used it himself. "Maribel," Dennis Grayson was saying, low and embarrassed. "Jesus, the girl was trying to—" "I said it's fine, Dennis." Adrian picked up his wine. He took a sip. He smiled the smile he used on men who owed him money, which was a smile like a knife kept in a drawer. "Maribel," he said. "More wine?" She turned to him, grateful. "Please." "Vincent," Adrian said without looking over. Vincent was in the corner, as he always was at dinners like this, unspeaking, unnoticed. "Another bottle of the Brunello for Mrs. Grayson, and the kitchen cloth. Would you ask Miss Hart to bring it to me directly when she has it?" A beat. "Yes, boss." The dinner went on. In the kitchen, Lila set the basket down on the prep counter and stood still. Elena, at the stove, glanced over, took in her face, and said nothing. Elena was 52 and had worked in 3 bad kitchens before this one. She knew when to ask and when not to. "You good?" "Fine." "Uh-huh." Lila took the clean cloth Elena handed her without looking. She took a second one just to have something in her other hand. She turned to go back out. Vincent was in the doorway. He was a big man and he filled doorways the way big men do when they mean to, and Lila stopped short and took a step back before she could help it. "Easy," Vincent said. His voice was lower than she remembered. "Boss wants the cloth. Directly. To him." "Yes, sir." "Not sir," he said. "Vincent." "Yes, Vincent." He looked at her another second. Lila could not read his face. It was not unkind. It was not kind. It was the face of a man who was deciding something. "You all right, Miss Hart?" "Yes." He stepped aside. "Let her pass." Lila walked back into the dining room with 2 folded cloths in her hands and her heart beating somewhere up in her throat, and she did not know, she genuinely did not know, whether she was walking towards safety or away from it. "What?" Adrian took the cloth from her hand. His fingers brushed hers. He did not think it was an accident, and he did not think it was on purpose. It was the thing that happened. She flinched. Not visibly, not enough for the table to see, but he felt it, a small tightening of her whole arm, the way a dog flinched when you move too fast near its face. "Thank you, Miss Hart," he said. She said, "Yes, sir," and turned to go. "One moment." She stopped. He looked up at her. The table had gone back to talking. Dennis Grayson was laughing too loud at something one of the other men had said. The room was full of noise. "Are you all right?" Adrian said. Quiet. Just for her. Her eyes met his for maybe the first time. They were gray. Not blue-gray. Not green-gray. Just gray. Like a river at the end of winter before the ice breaks. "Yes, sir." "You're sure?" "Yes, sir." He nodded. He let her go. She went. And somewhere in the part of Adrian Voss that he had spent 16 years pretending did not exist, a small bell rang, very clearly, and would not stop. But the dinner ended at 10:40. The Graysons went home. The other couples went home. Dennis, at the door, shook Adrian's hand and said something earnest about Tuesday that Adrian would later claim to have listened to. The doors closed. The lamps in the hall were turned down. The house did the thing it did at night, which was to become larger and colder and emptier, as if it had been holding itself together for company. Adrian stood in the foyer. Vincent came down the hall. "She's in the kitchen," Vincent said before Adrian asked. "Anyone else?" "Elena. Delaney's upstairs, still down with the headache. The girl sent the other two to bed after clearing." "The girl sent them to bed?" "Yeah." Adrian was quiet. "Boss." "You want to tell me what this is?" Adrian looked at him. He and Vincent Morel had known each other long enough that neither of them had to pretend. "I don't know yet," Adrian said. "Uh-huh. What did you find?" Vincent didn't answer right away. He reached into his jacket, took out a folded piece of paper, handed it over. "Ran her through Marco's people this morning, quietly, like you asked. And Lila Hart is clean. No priors, no warrants, no file. Driver's license out of Jerome County, issued 2.5 years ago. Before that, nothing. No previous license. No school records under that name. No tax filings under that name. No birth certificate under that name." Adrian looked up from the paper. "Nothing?" "Nothing. So the name is fake." "The name is fake," Vincent said. "Or it's real and it was made real 2.5 years ago. Either way, Lila Hart, as a person, is 29 months old." Adrian looked at the paper. He looked at the stairs. "Find out who she was before." "Already on it." Vincent. "Yeah." "Careful." "Yeah, boss, I heard you the first time." Vincent nodded. He turned to go. He was already halfway down the hall when Adrian spoke again. "Vincent." "Boss?" "Whoever it is." "Yeah." "If they come looking for her, what—" "I know," Vincent said. "You don't have to say it." He left. Adrian stood alone in the foyer of his own house and listened to the rain. It had not stopped. He did not think it would. Lila was drying the last of the crystal when Adrian came into the kitchen. Elena had gone to bed. The kitchen was warm and smelled of lamb and rosemary and the soap from the dishwater. A single lamp was on over the sink. The rest of the room was dim. Lila heard him come in. She did not turn. "Mr. Voss." "You can leave those," he said. "It's late." "I'm almost done." He crossed the room. He sat down at the staff table, the long wooden one the cooks ate at, not the polished one in the dining room. Lila had never seen him sit there. She had not known he knew it existed. "Sit down a minute," he said. She turned slowly, dish towel in her hand. "Sir, please." The please was what did it. It was not a word Adrian Voss used. She could hear that in his voice, the way it sat awkward in his mouth, like a tool he wasn't used to. She sat. She did not put the towel down. She folded her hands in her lap around it. He looked at her across the table. "Mrs. Grayson was rude to you," he said. "It was fine, sir." "It wasn't fine." She said nothing. "I want to ask you something." "Yes, sir." "And I want you to understand that whatever you answer, I will not hold against you. Nothing you say in this room tonight changes your position in this house. Do you understand me?" She looked up at him. Her face did the thing again. The closing. He watched it happen. He watched her pull down behind her own eyes, the way a person pulls a curtain across a lit window when headlights come down the road. "Yes, sir." "Are you in trouble, Lila?" The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere upstairs a pipe knocked. the way the pipes in that house always did after a rain. "No, sir," she said. Adrian nodded, slowly, like he had expected the answer. "All right," he said. "That's what I thought you'd say." He stood up. "If you change your mind," he said, "the answer doesn't change. My door is open. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." "Good night, Miss Hart." "Good night, sir." He walked to the door. He stopped. He did not turn around. "Lila." "Sir." "Whoever you're afraid of," Adrian Voss said without looking at her, in a voice so quiet it almost wasn't a voice. "He doesn't live in this house? I do." He walked out. Lila sat at the staff table with a dish towel crushed in her lap and listened to his footsteps go down the hall, up the stairs, into the east wing where she was not allowed to go, and for the first time since she had stopped doing it, years, it had been years, she put her hands over her face and cried, without sound, the way a woman cries when she has been holding her breath for so long she has forgotten that breathing used to be free. Upstairs in the east wing, Adrian Voss poured himself a drink he did not intend to finish. He went to the window. He looked out at the gravel drive, the iron gates, the long slope down toward Ashmont, and the lights along the river and the warehouses on Calder Street that belonged, on paper, to a shipping company that belonged, on paper, to a man who did not exist. Somewhere in that city someone was looking for Lila Hart. He did not know who. He did not know why. He had known her for 11 months, and he had not known her name until last night. And tonight, a woman in a $4,000 dress had told her not to touch her, and the maid had said, "I apologize, ma'am," in the voice of a woman who had survived worse in rooms with worse men. And Adrian Voss, who had spent his entire life not noticing small things, could no longer unhear it. He set the glass down. He went to the desk. He took out a phone, not the one on his nightstand, the other one, the one Vincent had given him that only 4 people in the world had the number to, and he dialed. "Marco, it's me. I need everything you have on a woman. 29 months she's been a ghost. Before that, she was someone. I want to know who she was. I want to know what she ran from. I want to know if it's still breathing." A pause. "Name." "I don't have a real one yet. I'll have it by tomorrow." "All right." "Marco?" "Yeah." Quiet as a closed door. "Always Adrian." He hung up. He stood at the window a long time. Outside, the rain kept falling on Ashmont, and a woman 2 floors below was drying her face on the apron of a uniform that didn't fit her, and somewhere across the city, a man she used to belong to was, at that very moment, sliding a photograph across a bar to a stranger and asking, in a voice like a closed fist, whether the stranger had seen her. Neither of them knew it yet, but the gates had closed behind her car 11 months ago, and they were about to open again for someone else. The morning after this Grayson dinner, Lila woke before the alarm she didn't own. The sky outside her narrow window was the color of dishwater, and the rain had finally stopped, leaving the city looking like it had been wrung out and laid flat to dry. She sat up on the edge of the bed for a long minute with her feet on the cold floor and her hands flat on her knees. And she did the thing she did every morning now. She listened. She listened to the house. 11 months ago, when she'd first come to the Voss estate, she had lain awake 3 nights in a row in this same bed, cataloging the sounds. The pipes knocking after midnight, the creak of the floorboard outside Mrs. Delaney's door around 4, when the old woman got up to use the bathroom, the low hum of the refrigerators in the pantry, the way the wind came off the hill and pushed against the east-facing windows with a kind of slow, steady patience, like it had all the time in the world to get inside. She had learned the house the way a prey animal learns a new field, by its sounds, by its exits. This morning, the house sounded wrong. It took her a moment to place it, and then she understood. The cars. There were more cars in the drive than usual. She could hear an engine idling, low, quiet, the kind of quiet that cost money, somewhere down by the gatehouse. And footsteps, measured and unhurried, on the gravel. More than one man. She got up. She dressed quickly, the way she always did, and went down the back stairs. In the kitchen, Elena was already at the stove, frying bacon and radiating silence. Elena, when she was in a mood, became a woman of very few words. Lila poured coffee from the staff pot and said nothing. Outside the window above the sink, she saw 2 men she did not know walking up the drive toward the side door. They wore dark coats. They walked like men who had been walking toward doors their whole lives. "Elena?" Lila said, soft. Who are they?" Elena didn't turn. "Not your business, mija." "Right, sorry. Bread's up." Lila took the bread off the counter. She carried it toward the formal dining room. Halfway down the hall, she stopped, because Vincent was standing in the doorway of the front parlor, speaking low to a man she had not seen in the house before. The man was perhaps 60, short, bald, with a gold chain at his throat and the flat, patient eyes of a person who had long ago run out of surprises. When he saw her, he stopped talking mid-sentence. Vincent did not turn. He knew she was there without looking. "Miss Hart," Vincent said. "Good morning." "Through the other hall, please." "Yes, sir." "Vincent, Miss Hart." "Yes." "Vincent." She went the other way. She felt the bald man's eyes on her back the whole length of the corridor, and when she reached the dining room and set the bread down, her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against the sideboard until the shaking stopped. Then she went on with her morning. Adrian did not come down for breakfast. He did not come down for lunch. By the time the sun had moved across the solarium and the ferns had lost their silver edges, Mrs. Delaney, pale but upright, her migraine gone or beaten into submission, had come back on duty and was running the house with the particular sharpness of a woman who felt she had fallen behind. She had Lila polishing the banisters on the main staircase, top to bottom, by hand. Lila did not mind. The banisters gave her a view of the front hall. The banisters let her see who came and who went. 3 more men arrived that morning. 2 of them left within the hour. One of them, a younger man, maybe 30, wearing a leather jacket that was not weather appropriate, did not leave at all. He went into the east wing with Vincent and did not come out. Twice Lila heard Adrian's voice carrying down the stairwell, not words, just the shape of them. Clipped, low, the kind of cadence a man used when he was giving orders he expected to be obeyed the first time. Around 2, Delaney came to find her. "Lila." "Ma'am." "Mr. Voss has asked to see you." Lila's hand stopped on the rail. She did not look up. "Now, ma'am?" "When you're finished with that, 10 minutes. "Where, ma'am?" "His office, East Wing." The East Wing, where staff did not go, where Lila, in 11 months, had never set foot. Delaney, she noticed, was watching her carefully. Not unkindly. Delaney was incapable of looking unkind at a Voss direction, but closely. The way a person watches a kettle they've just set on the stove, waiting to see if it will whistle. "Yes, ma'am." "Wash your hands first." "Yes, ma'am." "And Lila." "Ma'am?" "Whatever he asks you," Delaney said, choosing her words the way she chose everything. "Answer plain. The man does not like embroidery." Lila nodded. Delaney walked away. Lila stood on the stairs with a polishing cloth in her hand, and for a long moment she did not move, because a part of her, the oldest, smallest part, the part that had learned long ago to read the weather of men, was telling her very quietly that when she walked into that office, she was not going to come out the same person who walked in. She went. She washed her hands. She smoothed her hair in the mirror above the service sink and did not look long at her own face because she didn't like what it was doing. She walked through the main hall, up the main stairs, not the service stairs for once, and down the east wing corridor where the carpet was thicker and the lights dimmer and the air smelled faintly of leather and old smoke. The door to the office was open. Adrian was at his desk. He looked up when she came in. He did not smile. "Close the door, please." She closed it. "Sit down." There were 2 chairs in front of the desk. Heavy, leather, the kind of chairs a man's client sat in. She chose the one on the left because the one on the right had a coat thrown over the back of it. Dark, expensive, smelling faintly of cigarettes. And she did not want to sit next to a coat that might belong to the man in the parlor with the gold chain. Adrian watched her choose. He said nothing about it. He laid his hands flat on the desk. They were good hands. Long-fingered, steady. There was a thin white scar along the knuckle of his right index finger that she had not noticed before. She wondered how he'd gotten it. She wondered if he remembered. "I'm going to ask you some questions, Miss Hart." "Yes, sir." "And I'd like you to answer them." "Yes, sir." "The name on your identification," he said. "Lila Hart. How long has it been yours?" She did not flinch. She had, at some point in the last 16 hours, prepared for this. A small, careful part of her had known this was coming the moment Vincent had stepped into the kitchen doorway the night before. 2.5 years, sir. And before that? Before that, I had a different name. He nodded, slow. What was it? She looked at the scar on his finger, not at his face. Does it matter, sir? It matters if it follows you here. It's following me here, she said, whether I tell you or not. Adrian leaned back in his chair. He did not speak for a moment. He looked at her the way a man looks at a chess piece on a board, trying to see 3 moves ahead. When he spoke, his voice had gone quieter, not louder, which she was beginning to understand was the direction his voice went when he was paying full attention. Then why not tell me? Because the minute I tell you, she said, I'm no longer invisible, and being invisible is the only thing that has kept me alive. The room was very quiet. Miss Hart, Adrian said. Yes, sir. You have not been invisible in this house for some time. She looked up at him then. She could not help it. His face, in the afternoon light from the east-facing window, was not the face he had worn at dinner. It was more tired. It was more human. It was the face of a man who had been up thinking all night, and who was, for once in his life, saying something he was not entirely sure was wise to say. She did not answer. She could not. Adrian let the silence sit. Then he opened the drawer of his desk and took out a folder. He laid it on the desk between them. He did not open it. Vincent pulled this together this morning, he said. It's not much, but it's enough to tell me what I need to know, which is that 29 months ago, a woman named Lila Hart got a driver's license in Jerome County, and before that, that woman did not exist. That's what the paperwork says. The paperwork is a very thin story, Miss Hart, and thin stories always have another story under them. I'd like to know the one under it. Why? Excuse me. Why would you like to know, sir? She surprised him, she could see. The corner of his mouth did something that was almost, but not quite, a smile. Because something is wrong in my house, he said. And I don't like things being wrong in my house. Because there was a man asking questions about one of my staff in a bar in the warehouse district 2 nights ago, and my people only found out about it yesterday afternoon, and the man had a photograph. I'd like to know whose photograph it was. I have a guess. Lila's stomach did something slow and cold. A photograph, she said. Yes. Of a woman. Of a woman with your face, Miss Hart. She did not speak. She could not. I'd like, Adrian said very gently, as if he were speaking to something small and easily startled, the name that goes with that face, the one from before. And I'd like to know the name of the man who is carrying her picture into bars at 2 in the morning. She looked down at her hands in her lap. They were folded. They were not shaking. Somewhere, far away, she was proud of herself for that. 8 years ago, her hands would have shaken. His name, she said, and stopped. She tried again. The man's name, she said, is Ronan Keller. Adrian did not move, but she felt the room very slightly adjust around the name. She did not know who Ronan Keller was to Adrian Voss. She suspected, she hoped, she was afraid to hope, he was nothing. A name. A man. A problem that could be solved. She did not want him to be something else. She did not want him to be someone Adrian already knew. Go on. She stopped. She had not said it out loud in 4 years. She had not said it out loud to anyone except a woman at a shelter in Jerome County who had told her she did not ever have to say it again if she didn't want to, and then had helped her become Lila Hart. I was married to him for a little over 3 years. I left him 4 years ago. He did not accept that I had left. I moved 3 times. The 3rd time I paid a woman I met at a diner in, it doesn't matter where. I paid her $200, and she took me to a woman in Jerome who knew a man who could make you someone else, on paper, if you had a reason. I had a reason. What was your name before? Anna, she said. Anna Keller. She had not said it aloud in almost 3 years. The name sat in the room between them like a thing dragged in from outside. Anna, Adrian said. He said it the way he had said Lila in the library, as if testing its weight. I don't use it. I understand. Please don't. I won't. He did open the folder then. He did not show her what was in it. He flipped through 2 pages, then a 3rd, then a 4th, with the speed of a man who was not reading but confirming. His face did not change. When he reached the last page, he closed the folder. Ronan Keller, he said, 44. Owns a construction company based in Rivermouth, about 300 miles north of here. Legitimate business on paper. Runs 3 other operations off the books, including one that moves a certain class of people across the state line in the beds of his company's trucks. No convictions. 2 arrests, both dropped. Reported to have hit a man in a parking lot 6 years ago hard enough to put him in a coma for 9 days. The man did not press charges. The man walked with a limp for the rest of his life. Any of this ringing a bell, Miss Hart? All of it. All right. He closed the folder. Did he hit you, Anna? She flinched when he said the name. She could not help it. She had given it to him. She had handed it to him. And hearing it in his mouth was like hearing her own voice from across a room. Foreign. Intimate. Wrong. Please don't call me that, sir. I'm sorry. Yes, she said. He hit me. How often? Often enough. How bad? She did not answer that one. She turned her wrist over, slowly, and looked at the pale comma-shaped scar on the back of it, and then she turned it back. She did not have to say anything. Adrian's eyes had followed the motion. He had already understood. All right, he said again. He stood. He walked to the window. He stood with his back to her for a long moment, looking out at the gravel drive and the gatehouse and the low gray shoulder of the city beyond. When he turned back, his face was not the face she had seen before. It was harder. It was not hard in the way a face got hard at her. She knew that face. It was hard the way a gate was hard, with something on the other side of it that she was not meant to see. Lila. Sir, you understand that you are safe in this house. She did not answer. She had been told she was safe in 3 houses before this one. You don't believe me. I believe you mean it, sir. But you don't believe it's true. I believe, she said, and her voice broke a little, and she hated it, that men mean a lot of things, and meaning is not the same as being able to. He looked at her a long time. Fair, he said at last. He came back to the desk. He did not sit. He stood behind it and laid a hand flat on the folder. Here's what is going to happen, he said. You are not going to leave this house. Not the grounds, not the drive, not the gate. Not for groceries, not for errands, not for a walk in the back garden without Vincent or one of his people knowing where you are. You will continue your work. Delaney will be told nothing. Elena will be told nothing. As far as this house is concerned, nothing has changed. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Vincent will look after you, personally. If you need something, you go to him. If you see something, you go to him. If you feel something, you go to him. Anything at all, Miss Hart. You do not carry it alone. Are we clear? Yes, sir. And, he paused, you will stay out of the front of the house for the next several days. No table service. No answering the door. I will tell Delaney you have been reassigned to the upstairs rooms while she recovers. Is this acceptable to you? Yes, sir. Good. He looked down at the folder. He pushed it, very slowly, an inch to the left on the desk, as if he was straightening something crooked. Mr. Voss. Miss Hart. What are you going to do? He looked up. She had asked it before she had decided to ask it. She had not planned the question. It came up out of her like a bubble from the bottom of a deep pot. And she watched him receive it, and she watched him consider, for a fraction of a second, telling her the truth, and then watched him decide, carefully, deliberately, with the small, tired look of a man choosing the less kind of 2 kindnesses, not to. I'm going to handle it, he said. Sir, that's all you need to know, Lila. Mr. Voss, please. He looked at her. His eyes, she realized, were not the color she had thought they were. She had thought they were black. They were not black. They were a very dark brown, the color of coffee when it had been sitting too long. She could see now the small tiredness at the edges of them, the small human thing. Lila. Yes. Do you want him to find you? No, sir. Do you want anyone to find you? No, sir. Then trust me to make sure no one does. She did not trust him. She had never trusted anyone to do anything for her in her entire adult life. She trusted herself, and she trusted the locks on doors, and she trusted the knife she kept under her pillow, which she had carried with her from house to house for 4 years now, and which she had not told anyone about, not even the woman at the shelter. But she looked at Adrian Voss across that desk, and she saw the way his hand sat on the folder that contained her real name, and she understood in a way she could not have articulated that for the first time in her adult life someone had seen her. Actually seen her, not the uniform, not the apron, not the downturned eyes, and had not moved to take something. "Yes, sir," she said. "Good. Thank you, Mr. Voss." "Don't," he said. "Not yet." She stood to go. She was at the door when he spoke again. "Miss Hart." "Sir?" "The knife under your pillow." Her hand froze on the doorknob. "Keep it there." She did not turn around. She could not. She nodded once at the door and let herself out. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall for a moment and closed her eyes, and she thought, he knows about the knife, which means he knows things about me. He has not told me he knows, which means Vincent has been in my room, and the old fear rose up in her and wanted to crack her open. And then, underneath it, something else. Something new. Something she did not know what to do with. He had told her to keep it. She went back to work. The rest of the afternoon moved strangely. It was as if some thin membrane between her and the house had been peeled back, and the smallest things, Delaney's voice carrying from the pantry, the cook's radio playing a station Lila did not recognize, the click of a door closing 2 rooms away, had all become too loud, too close, too sharp. She dusted. She polished. She carried linens. She kept her head down. But every time she passed a window, her eyes went to the gate, and every time she passed a door, she counted the steps between herself and the nearest exit, which was a thing she had not done in this house for months. She had let herself forget to do it. She understood now that letting herself forget had been a mistake. At 4, Vincent appeared in the hallway by the linen closet. "Miss Hart." "Vincent, walk with me a minute." She followed him. He led her not to the kitchen, not to the office, but to a small room off the back hallway that she had always thought was a storage closet. It was not. It was a small, windowless room with a desk, 2 chairs, a bank of small black and white monitors on one wall, and a gun safe behind the desk with its door standing open. The monitors showed the gate, the drive, the front door, the back door, the kitchen door, the east lawn, the west lawn, and 2 angles of the hallway outside Mr. Voss's office. Lila had been in the house 11 months and had not known this room existed. Vincent closed the door behind her. "Sit, please." She sat. He did not sit. He leaned against the edge of the desk. He looked in the dim light of the monitors like a man whose body had outlived several versions of itself. His hands were thick. There was a white scar on his jaw she had not noticed before, faint as a pencil line. "Boss told you I was looking after you." "Yes. All right. So here's how it's going to go. Between now and when this is finished, and it will finish, that I'll have eyes on you or somebody I trust will. You will not know most of the time. That's on purpose. What I need from you is small. All right. You don't take calls from numbers you don't know. You don't answer the door. If someone asks for you by name, either name, you tell Delaney, you tell me, you do not speak to them yourself. If you see a car you don't recognize at the gate, you tell me. If you feel wrong, not if you think, if you feel, Miss Hart, your feeling is better than your thinking in these situations. You come and find me. The boss wants me on you personally. I'll do my best. I'm not a young man. I might miss things. All right. Do you have a phone? No. You do now. He opened a drawer. He took out a small black phone, an older model, the kind with a physical keyboard. He laid it on the desk between them. My number is the only one programmed. You hit the call button, it calls me. It won't call anyone else. It won't do anything else. If it rings, it's me. If it doesn't, don't touch it. All right. And Miss Hart? Yes. The knife. She flushed. Mr. Voss told you to keep it. I'm telling you something else. If you ever have to use it, and I don't think you will, but if you do not hesitate. You understand me. You do not stop because he says your name. You do not stop because he cries. You do not stop because for 1 second you feel sorry for him. A man who has put his hands on you once has already shown you who he is. The next time he puts his hands on you, it is not for the first time. It is for the last. Do you understand me? She looked at Vincent Morel in the blue light of the security monitors, and something in her, Some small, rusted thing she had thought broken beyond repair shifted. Yes, Vincent. Good. He pushed off from the desk. He walked her to the door. He opened it. The hallway beyond was empty and ordinary and smelled of the floor polish she had used on the banisters that morning. One more thing. Yes. The boss. Yes. He is a hard man, Miss Hart. I've known him half his life. He's done things you should not ask him about. He is not... Vincent searched for a word and did not find it, and settled for a shorter one. He is not a kind man. He is not trying to be. But what he said to you today, he said because he meant it. He does not waste words. You should know that. Whatever else you decide about him, you should know that much. I do. All right. Vincent. Yes. Thank you. He nodded, once, and walked away down the hall, and she stood alone with a small black phone in her pocket, and the new strange weight of being looked after settling over her shoulders like a coat she did not know how to wear. That night she did not sleep well. She had not expected to. She lay in her narrow bed with the knife under her pillow and the phone on the nightstand and listened to the house, and the house sounded, for the first time in 11 months, like a thing she was inside of instead of on the edge of. The pipes knocked. The wind pressed against the east-facing windows. Somewhere, very far below her, a door closed, and then another, and then there was a long quiet that went on for hours. Toward dawn, she heard, or thought she heard, a car come up the drive, pause at the front of the house, and leave again without the gate closing. She sat up. She listened. She did not hear it a second time. Eventually she lay back down, and at some point she slept, and she dreamed of a kitchen in Rivermouth with a broken drawer handle and the particular quality of light that came through a particular window at a particular hour, and she woke with her face wet. 3 days passed like that. Lila did her work. She stayed out of the front of the house. Delaney, who had been told whatever she had been told, did not ask questions, which was itself an answer. Adrian did not send for her again. She saw him twice at a distance, once crossing the foyer with Vincent at his elbow, once in the library late one night when she passed the open door on her way to the back stairs, and saw him at the desk with the lamp on, and a glass at his elbow, not drinking from it, just looking at something she could not see from the hallway. He did not look up. She did not stop. The fourth day, something changed. She felt it before she understood it. The house had been full of visitors all week, men she did not know, coming and going at odd hours, none of them speaking to her, most of them not even seeing her. On the morning of the fourth day, the visitors stopped. The drive was quiet. The phones in the east wing, which she could sometimes hear ringing if she was on the main stairs, did not ring. Vincent, when she saw him in the hall, nodded at her and kept walking, which was itself a kind of sentence. She could not read him, but she had begun to understand in the few days she had known him that Vincent's quiet came in two kinds: the quiet of a man waiting for something to happen, and the quiet of a man who has just done something and is letting the room settle. That morning, he was the second kind. At 11, Delaney found her upstairs changing bed linens. Lila. Ma'am? Mr. Voss wants to see you. Her hand stopped on the pillowcase. Now, ma'am? In the library. When you're done here. Not before. Yes, ma'am. Delaney looked at her a long moment. Her face, in the gray light of the upstairs hallway, was doing something complicated. Not disapproval. Not approval. Something quieter. Something almost like the look a woman gave another woman when she understood something she was not going to speak aloud. Lila. Ma'am? Whatever is happening, Delaney said, I am not going to ask. Thank you, ma'am. But if you ever need to... Delaney stopped. She looked at the hem of her own apron. She straightened it. I had a sister once, girl. I know the shape of certain things. That's all I'm going to say. Lila's eyes stung. She did not let them do more than that. Thank you, Mrs. Delaney. Delaney nodded once, crisp, and left. Lila finished the bed. She smoothed the pillow. She stood a long moment with her hand on the corner of the mattress, looking out the window at the gray morning. Then she went down. Adrian was at the window of the library with his back to the door, his hands behind him, a glass on the small table at his elbow. He did not turn when she came in. He said, to the window, Close the door, please, Miss Hart. She closed it. Sit down. She sat. He stayed at the window another moment. Then he turned and she saw his face, and she understood that the thing Vincent had done and not told her about was a thing that had happened, and that Adrian had been the one to do it, and that whatever it was, it had cost him something, and he had paid it willingly, and now he was standing in his own library trying to decide how to say that to a woman he had barely known a week ago. Ronan Keller, he said, will not be coming to this city. Her throat closed. Sir, he will not be looking for you. Sir, He has other things at the moment to worry about. And he will have other things to worry about for some time. I'm not going to tell you what they are. I'm not going to tell you what I did. I'm telling you this. The man you have been running from for 4 years is, as of this morning, not a man you have to run from anymore. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? She did not. She did. Her hands, in her lap, were not shaking. Her eyes were burning. Somewhere in her chest, something that had been held in a fist so long she had forgotten it was a fist began, very slowly, to open. And the opening was the worst pain she had felt in years, because it turned out the fist had been holding her together. Adrian watched her. He did not move toward her. He did not speak. He gave her the room. After a long time, she said, in a voice she did not recognize, "Why?" He did not pretend not to understand the question. He looked at her a long moment. He picked up the glass from the table. He did not drink from it. He set it down again. "I don't know yet," Adrian Voss said. "I'll tell you when I do." Lila Hart, who had been Anna Keller, who had been invisible in 3 houses and 2 cities and 1 marriage, sat in a leather chair in a rich man's library and put her face in her hands, and this time she did not try to stop the sound. Adrian did not come closer. He did not touch her. He stood at the window, his back half to her, and waited, and let her cry in the only kind of privacy he knew how to give, which was the privacy of a man who understood that some things could not be watched, and also not be alone. Outside in Ashmont, the sun came briefly through a crack in the clouds, turned the wet slate of the drive silver for 30 seconds, and went back behind the gray. Somewhere 300 miles north, in a hospital room in Rivermouth that no one at the Voss estate would ever mention again, a man with a broken jaw and 2 broken hands was just beginning to understand that the photograph he had been carrying in bars for 6 weeks was a photograph he was never going to look at again. In the library, Lila wept. In the hallway outside the library, Mrs. Delaney, who had been about to knock with the afternoon tea, heard the sound through the heavy oak door, stopped, turned around, and walked quietly back toward the kitchen with the tray still in her hands. Because some things, and she had learned this the long way, in the long years of her own long life, some things were not for interrupting. Delaney set the tray down in the kitchen and stood for a moment with her hands on the counter, staring at nothing. Elena looked up from the stove, read her face, and went back to the stock she was reducing without a word. The 2 women had worked this kitchen together for 14 years. They had a language that did not require speaking. When Delaney finally moved again, she picked up a dish towel and began folding and refolding it, the way she did when she was thinking about something she had no intention of saying out loud. Upstairs in the library, Lila eventually stopped. She did not stop because she had run out of feeling. She stopped because her body, as bodies do, got tired of being the shape of grief, and took back over. She lowered her hands from her face. She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her palm. She took a breath that did not catch, and then another one that did, and then a third that did not. She looked up. Adrian had not moved. He was still at the window. His back was still half to her. The glass on the little table beside him was still full. "Sir?" I'm sorry." "For what, Miss Hart?" For... She did not know for what. For making a sound in his library. For being the thing he'd had to handle. For being a woman who had walked into his house under a name that wasn't hers. For any of it. All of it. "Don't." "Sir." "Don't apologize to me," Adrian said. Not for that. Not ever for that." He turned, finally. He looked at her face, really looked, in a way he had not allowed himself to, not even in the kitchen 3 nights ago. And she saw that something in his own face had loosened, not softened. Adrian Voss's face was not built for softness, but loosened, the way a fist loosens when it stops needing to be a fist. He crossed the room. He did not sit beside her. He sat across from her in the other leather chair, and he leaned forward a little with his elbows on his knees, the way a man sat at the end of a long day when he had finally set something heavy down. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yes, sir." "Stop calling me sir." She blinked. "When we are alone," he said, "in a room." "Stop. I don't like the way it sounds anymore." "What should I call you?" "Adrian is fine." "I can't call you Adrian." "Why not?" "Because you pay me," she said, "and because the last time I was told to call a man by his first name, it was by a man who thought calling him by his first name meant I'd agreed to things I had not agreed to." Adrian sat with that. He didn't argue. He took it the way a good listener takes bad weather, without commentary. "Then Mr. Voss," he said, "in front of the house. When we're alone, you don't have to call me anything." "All right. Thank you." "Thank you," she said. "Mr. Voss?" He almost smiled. He didn't quite, but she saw it try to happen at the corner of his mouth, and she understood for the first time that Adrian Voss had a smile somewhere inside him, and that it was probably a rare thing, and that she had just watched it attempt an entrance. They sat a long moment in the quiet. "Can I ask you something now?" she said. "Yes." "What you did?" "No." "Mr. Voss, No, Lila. Not that. I need to know if he's alive." She exhaled. She had not realized she'd been holding the breath. She did not know if the exhale was relief or something darker. She thought about that for a moment. Honestly, the way she had trained herself to be honest, alone in small rooms with her own self, and decided, with a small coldness that surprised her, that the darker thing was closer to the truth. She had wanted him not to be alive. She had wanted it for so long she had stopped letting herself want it. And now a man she barely knew had given her the next best thing, which was the particular gift of not having to want it anymore. "All right," she said. "He will not walk the same," Adrian said, "and he will not use his hands the same, and he will not, for the rest of a life that will be shorter than he expected, be under the impression that he is an apex predator in any room he walks into. That is as much as I am going to tell you, and it is more than I should have told you, and I am telling you because I want you to understand that the word handled in my mouth is not a vague word. Do you understand me?" "Yes." "Good. Was anyone else hurt?" "No one who wasn't standing in the way of the thing I went there to do." She did not ask him what he meant by that. She knew, in the cold, clear part of herself, that had always understood men like the one she had married and the one she now sat across from, that there were some questions whose answers would not make her feel better, and that to ask them was to confuse curiosity with courage. Instead, she said, "Why?" He looked at her. "I asked you that before," she said. "You said you didn't know yet. I want to know if you know now." Adrian Voss did not answer right away. He looked at his hands, which were loosely clasped between his knees. He looked at the rug, not the one with the wine stain, which had been sent out for cleaning, but the one beneath it, a darker rug she had not noticed. He looked finally at her face. "I don't know if I can explain it the way you need me to." "Try." "All right." He rubbed his thumb across the knuckle of his other hand, where the small white scar was. She had not asked him about the scar, and she was not going to. It occurred to her, watching him, that Adrian Voss was a man who lived inside his own silences the way some men lived inside their own houses. There were rooms of him she was not going to see. That was all right. She knew something about rooms you didn't show. "I have been," he said, "a certain kind of man for a long time. A useful kind in this city. A kind that solves problems. Not always the right way, not always the legal way. I'm not going to pretend to you that I am something I'm not. You've lived in this house long enough to know what I do." "I have some idea." "All right. But you were asking me why." "I am getting there, Miss Hart. Sorry." "Don't be sorry. I am just a slow talker sometimes." He leaned back. He passed a hand across his face. 11 months ago," he said, "Delaney came to me and said she had hired a maid for the downstairs. I said fine. That was the first and last time I thought about it. I have a great deal of other things to think about. You were a piece of the house, like the lamps. You were something that worked, that I did not have to look at. That is the truth, and I am not proud of the truth, but I'm telling it to you." "All right. A week ago I went down to the club. I do that from time to time. My brother opened the club 8 years ago. He is dead now. I've kept it open because I do not know how not to, and because it makes money, and because it is the only room in the city where I can sit for 2 hours without anyone asking me for anything. I had sat for maybe 10 minutes when I looked up from my table, and I saw a woman on the floor who I did not at first recognize because she was. He stopped. He looked for the word. Moving differently, he said. That is the best I can give you. Lila felt the back of her neck go hot. She had not been at the club. She had been in her room, unless... Mr. Voss? When was this? Last Thursday. She closed her eyes. Last Thursday. She had gone into the city with Elena, who sometimes needed help carrying supplies back from the market. Elena had met her sister for an hour. Lila had stood outside a corner store waiting. A woman she didn't know had come out of a side door of a building 2 doors down, already half drunk at 5 in the afternoon, and had pulled her inside laughing and said, "Honey, you look like you've never been in a club in daylight. Come on, it's dead in here. Have a drink with us. My birthday." There had been 3 women. They had been kind to her in the way strangers sometimes were, in the way Lila had not let herself be kind to in years. She had stayed 20 minutes. She had not drunk anything. She had stood at the edge of a polished floor under a pink light she would never have chosen, laughing at something one of the women had said, and for 20 minutes she had not been a maid, and she had not been a wife, and she had not been a woman running, and she had not been Anna, and she had not entirely been Lila either. She had been, and the word came to her now, sitting across from Adrian Voss, she had been a person. "I didn't know," she said. "That was your club." "I know you didn't. I wouldn't have. I know, Lila. Don't." "I was only there. I watched you for maybe 2 minutes," Adrian said, "and I could not, for the first minute, understand why my own housemaid was in my club, laughing with a stranger's arm around her shoulder. I thought, forgive me, I thought I was wrong. I thought the light was bad. I thought I was tired. And then you turned your head, and the light caught your face, and I realized I had looked at you every day for almost a year, and I had never once seen your face." She did not say anything. She could not. "I sent Vincent to find out if it was you. He came back and told me it was. I went home. I sat in this room. I did not sleep. The next night I came down and I found you on your knees in this room, cleaning a stain a drunk stockbroker put on my rug, and I—" He stopped. He laughed once under his breath. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man catching himself at something. "And I was angry," he said, "at myself, at Delaney, at whichever one of my guests had spilled the wine. I could not figure out, all at once, who I was angry at. So I said nothing, and you left, and I stood here for a long time, and I understood that I was angry because a woman had been laughing in my club the night before, and the next night she was on her hands and knees in my library, and that in between those 2 things had been me and my house, and the way my house made people disappear." Her throat was tight. She did not speak. "That is not an answer to your question," Adrian said. "I am aware of that. I am trying." "You're trying." "I went to my office. I told Vincent to look into you. I did not know what I was looking for. A day later he told me your paperwork was wrong, and a day after that a man with a photograph of you walked into a bar 2 blocks from my docks, and a day after that I sat across from you in this office, and I watched you try to decide whether to tell me the truth, and you told it to me, and I understood in that moment." He stopped. "What?" "I understood," he said, "that whatever you had been running from, it was not going to get through my door as long as I had doors." She could not look at him. She looked at her hands. They were folded. They were still not shaking. She was distantly astonished by her hands. "That is not because I am a good man, Lila. I am not a good man. I am telling you this because I don't want you to mistake what I did for something I am not. I did not go to Rivermouth because it was right. I went because a man I had never met had walked into my city carrying a photograph of a woman in my house, and I had decided, before I could articulate it to myself, that that was not going to happen. The reason I could not answer you 3 days ago is that I did not know myself whether the thing I was doing was a thing I was doing for you or for me. I have since decided that those are not mutually exclusive things, and I think that is as honest as I can be." She nodded. She did not look up. "Mr. Voss?" "Yes." "You understand?" Her voice cracked. She waited. She tried again. You understand that I do not have anything to give you. You understand that whatever this is for you, whatever the reason is that you are telling me this right now in this room, I can't give you what men usually want. I have not. Lila, I am not asking you to want anything. Lila, stop. She stopped. I have not asked you for anything, Adrian said, and I am not going to. I am telling you what I did and why I did it because you deserve to know. And because I do not want to be the kind of man who saves a woman once and then expects her to be grateful for the rest of her life. I have met those men. I have killed 2 of them. I don't ever want you to look at me and see one of them. Do you understand? She understood. She understood so completely that it made her dizzy. I understand. Good. He stood. He walked back to the window. He picked up the glass he had not drunk from. He drank from it now, finally, and set it back down empty. You are free to go, Miss Hart. Sir? The house. If you want to leave, I can have Vincent drive you wherever you want. I can set you up somewhere, a different city, a different country if you prefer. I have resources. They are, as you may have guessed, considerable. She did not understand for a second. You're asking me to leave. No, I am telling you that you are free to. That is different. Oh. The choice, Adrian Voss said, looking at the window, is not a thing you have had for a long time, Lila. I am trying to give it back to you. I am not going to be offended by whatever you do with it. She sat very still in the leather chair. She thought about it. She thought about it, honestly, for a long time, and he did not rush her, and Delaney did not knock, and Elena did not send up tea, and the house, for once, allowed her a room to think in. She thought about a 1-bedroom apartment in a city she had never been to, with a door she could lock and a window she could look out of, and a name on the lease that did not require her to look over her shoulder, and the long, silent years of that life rising up ahead of her. And at the center of the picture she could see, clearly, the way you can see the shape of a thing that isn't there, the absence of Adrian Voss. She thought about this house. She thought about Delaney and Elena and Vincent and the light in the solarium at 8 in the morning. She thought about a man standing at a window with his back half to her, talking to her as if she were a person, as if she had always been one. Mr. Voss? Yes. I'd like to stay. He did not turn. All right. If that's acceptable. It is acceptable to me, Miss Hart. All right. You'll tell me, he said, still not turning, if that ever changes. Yes. Good. She stood. She smoothed her apron. She looked at the back of his head a moment longer than she needed to. Then she walked to the door. Mr. Voss? Yes. Thank you. He turned his head just enough to look at her over his shoulder. Don't thank me, Lila. I wasn't thanking you for Rivermouth. He studied her a moment. I know, he said. She left. In the hallway, she leaned for a second against the wall the way she had after their first meeting in this office, and she closed her eyes, and she let out a breath that seemed to have been building for 4 years. Then she went back to work. She had sheets to finish, and the upstairs sitting room still needed dusting, and there was a particular habit of mind, trained into her by a long bad marriage and a longer running, that insisted the best thing to do with a large feeling was to set it down and pick up a smaller, more useful thing, like a dust cloth. The days that followed were strange and quiet. Nothing happened. That was the strangeness. Nothing continued to happen for a week, and then another week, and then a third. And the house, which had been full of unfamiliar men and low voices and cars that did not belong in the drive, emptied out and returned to the thing it had been when Lila had first come to it. A large, cool, well-kept quiet, run by Mrs. Delaney with an iron timetable, populated by staff who did not ask questions and did not, as a rule, speak much to one another while they worked. Elena burned a sauce one afternoon and cursed for 40 minutes in 2 languages. The boiler in the east wing made a sound at 3 in the morning that woke Lila up. A crow got into the solarium through a window that had been left open, and Delaney and Lila spent half an hour chasing it out with tea towels. And when it was gone, Delaney laughed. Actually laughed, a small, startled laugh, as if she had surprised herself. And Lila laughed with her. And after they had finished laughing, Delaney said, "That was the most exercise I've had since 2002. and went back to the pantry without another word. Ordinary things. Layla found, in the course of that first quiet week, that she did not know how to be in an ordinary day. She had not had one in so long. Every morning she woke braced for something, and every night she went to bed unbraced, and in between she felt a kind of low, constant guilt, as if she had stolen the quiet from someone who deserved it more. Adrian, during all of this, kept a careful distance. He did not send for her again. He did not come down to the kitchen. He did not appear in doorways. She saw him, sometimes, crossing the foyer or passing at the end of a hall, always with Vincent or alone, always moving, always with a small nod if he caught her eye. He did not speak. She understood that he was, and the word, when it came to her, surprised her, being careful. Not of her. For her. He had, she realized, given her back her life, and he did not want to be the next thing to fill the room it had left. So it was she, in the end, who broke the quiet. It was late on a Thursday. She had finished her shift. Delaney had gone to bed. Elena was out. Her sister had been hospitalized in the city, nothing serious but enough to require visiting. And the kitchen was dim and empty. Lila had come down for a glass of water. She drank it standing at the sink, looking out the dark window at the gravel drive. She did not know what made her do what she did next. She would never, later, be able to say precisely what moved her. A thing, maybe, that had been building. A thing, maybe, that had not been moved. She walked, in her slippers, up the main stairs and down the east wing corridor. She stopped outside the library. The door was ajar. A lamp was on. She knocked. "Come in?" She went in. Adrian was at the desk, which surprised her. She had expected the window. She had expected the glass that was never drunk from. And he was reading a file. He looked up when she came in. His face did not do the thing it did with guests. It did something else. Something briefly unguarded, and then guarded again so quickly she might have missed it if she had not been watching. "Miss Hart?" "Mr. Voss." "It's late." "I know." "Is something wrong?" No. He waited. He did not ask again. He was, she was coming to understand, a man who asked a question once and then let the silence do the rest of the work. "I wanted to..." She stopped. She started again. "I've been thinking about the choice." He set the file down. He closed it. "All right. You said I could leave." "Yes." "You said you'd set me up." "Yes." "I'd like to understand," she said, "what happens if I don't? If you don't leave? If I stay?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Nothing has to happen, Lila. That is not what I'm asking." He understood. She could see it in his face, a small, careful recognition. He was quiet another moment. Then he gestured to the chair across from him, the one that didn't have the coat on it. She sat. She did not fold her hands in her lap this time. She put them on the arms of the chair. "I am not a good man, Leela." "I know. I'm older than you by 9 years. I run things that, if you knew the full shape of, would frighten you. I have had..." He stopped. He seemed to reconsider what he was going to say. "I have not for a long time made a habit of being near a woman who was not paid to be near me. That is an ugly sentence, and I am saying it to you because I am not going to start our, whatever this becomes, if it becomes anything, by lying about what I have been. All right. I have not touched you. I know. I am not going to touch you without being asked to. I know that too. Do you?" "Yes, Mr. Voss." "How?" She thought about that. She thought about it honestly. She did not give the first answer that came, because the first answer was something about his eyes, and she did not trust men's eyes as evidence of anything anymore, and neither, she suspected, did he. "Because," she said, "you told Vincent to tell me to keep the knife." Adrian looked down at his hands. She watched his jaw work for a moment. She watched him breathe in slowly through his nose and out again, the way a man breathed when he had been given something he had not expected to be given. "All right," he said, quiet. "I don't know what I want," she said. "I want you to understand that. I don't know if what I feel is being looked at, Mr. Voss. Being seen. I have not been seen by anyone in a very long time, and you have, accidentally, I don't think you meant to, you have seen me. And I don't know if that is a thing, or if it is the first thing of other things, or if I am simply dazzled by being looked at, the way a plant is dazzled by a lamp. I want to be honest with you about that. I do not want to promise you something I cannot deliver. I have been promised things I could not be delivered, and I know what that feels like, and I will not do that to you. He looked at her. Miss Hart. Yes? I am not asking for a promise. I know. I am asking, if I am asking anything, to be allowed to know you. I don't know who I am anymore, Mr. Voss. Good, he said. Then we'll find out together, at whatever speed you want, including stopped, including never. That is my offer. It is the only offer I have. Do you understand? Yes. All right. Owen. She sat there for a moment longer. The house was very quiet. She could hear, somewhere below them, a clock ticking in a hallway. She could hear her own breath. She could hear his. She stood up. Good night, Mr. Voss. Good night, Lila. She was at the door when she said it. She did not turn around. She had practiced saying his name exactly once, silently, in her own mouth, walking up the stairs, and she was afraid she would not be able to do it again for a long time. Adrian. She said it so quietly he almost missed it. He did not miss it. Yes. Good night. Good night. She left. In the hallway, she walked slowly, her hand trailing along the wall, because her legs were not entirely sure of themselves. In the library behind her, Adrian Voss sat at his desk with a file in front of him that he had not been reading for a long time, and he did not pick it up again. He sat in the quiet, and he listened to her footsteps going down the corridor and down the stairs, and away toward her own small room 2 floors below, and when he could no longer hear them, he stood up, and he walked to the window. Outside, the night was clear for the first time in weeks. The clouds had broken. The city lay below the hill in its low, glittering smear, the river black, the bridges strung with their orange lights like beads on a wire. The warehouses on Calder Street dark at this hour, except for the 2 small windows he knew were always on, where men who worked for him were always awake. He looked at all of it. He did not feel what he usually felt when he looked at all of it, which was a kind of cold, small satisfaction at the size of the thing he had built. He felt instead something quieter. He realized after a moment, afraid. He had not been afraid of anything in a long time. He thought about that. He thought about it for a long time, standing at the window with his hands loose at his sides. He thought about the scar on his right index finger, which he had gotten when he was 24 years old, the same year his father had been buried, the same year he had decided, finally and without discussion with anyone, that he was going to be the kind of man who never had to be afraid again. He had kept that promise. It had cost him. He understood, in this moment, standing at this window, more than he had known it was costing him. It had cost him the shape of his own life, and now a woman 2 floors below him had just said his name. He closed his eyes. He stood at the window a long time. Downstairs, in a narrow bed on the 3rd floor of a house she had not, in the end, left, Lila Hart, who had been Anna Keller, and who was, she suspected, in the process of becoming someone else still, someone she had not been introduced to yet, lay awake listening to the house, and the house, for the first time in 11 months, did not sound like a place she was inside of. It sounded like a place she lived in. She did not sleep for a long time. When she did not dream of Rivermouth. She dreamed of nothing at all, which was its own kind of mercy, and a kind she had not been allowed in 4 years. Outside, the night went on, indifferent and clear, and across town at the edge of the warehouse district, the lights in a small 2nd-floor office above a tailor's shop that belonged, on paper, to a company that did not exist, went on at 2:14 a.m. A man neither Adrian nor Lila had ever met sat down at a desk, opened a folder, and began very carefully to read, and what he was reading was a photograph of a woman who had come out of a diner in a town 3 states away 8 months before he had started looking, and underneath the photograph was a note, handwritten in a careful square print that read only, "Found her." What now? The lights in that office stayed on until 4. The office above the tailor's shop belonged, in the way that things in Ashmont belonged, to a man who had never set foot in it. His name was Saul Merritt. He was 61, lived in a house on the North Shore that was registered to his late mother, and in 40 years of business had never once signed his own name on a piece of paper he did not intend to burn. He was a fixer. He had fixed things for Ronan Keller's father before he had fixed things for Ronan. And before that, briefly and unhappily, he had fixed one thing for Adrian Voss's father, which was how he had come to know the Voss name and to decide at the age of 42 that the Voss name was one he would in the future avoid. He had been avoiding it in one way or another for 19 years. The photograph on his desk at 2:14 that Thursday morning was not a new one. It had come to him 6 days earlier in a brown envelope delivered by a courier he did not recognize from an address he was not given. The photograph was of a woman standing in the doorway of a diner on a road outside a town called Mercer, where Saul had never been. The woman was half-turned, caught mid-step. Her hair was tied back. She was wearing a coat that did not fit. The photograph had been taken from inside a parked car, through a windshield, and whoever had taken it had not been trying to be discreet. The angle was wrong, the framing was cheap, which told Saul a great deal about the person who had taken it, none of it flattering. Under the photograph was a handwritten note that read, "Found her. What now?" Saul had ignored the envelope for 3 days. He had other things to do. On the 4th day, he had put it in his top drawer where it had sat for another 2 days. That Thursday, a friend of a man who owed Saul a considerable debt had called him and said, with the careful neutrality of a man delivering news he did not wish to be associated with, that a certain Mr. Keller of Rivermouth had been assaulted 2 weeks earlier in his own garage, and that the men who had done it had not taken anything, and that Mr. Keller was recovering slowly in a private clinic, and that the rumor, only a rumor, the friend had stressed, was that the men had been working for a certain Mr. Voss of Ashmont. Saul had thanked the man. He had hung up the phone. He had sat at his desk for a long time. Then he had opened the drawer and taken out the envelope and laid the photograph on his desk and started to read. He read, in the careful way of a man who read photographs and not faces, for almost 2 hours. He read the coat. He read the hair. He read the hands. He read the doorway of the diner and the shape of the woman's back. He read, at last, the handwriting on the note, the square, controlled print of a man who had been trained at some point to print carefully on forms. Not a gangster's hand, an accountant's hand maybe, a manager's. A man who reported to other men. At 4 in the morning, Saul Merritt turned off the lamp on his desk, put the photograph and the note back in the envelope, put the envelope in a small fireproof box in the floor of his closet, and went home, because he had decided what he was going to do, and it was a thing that could wait until daylight. He was going to call Vincent Morel. Saul Merritt and Vincent Morel had a long and careful relationship that had never, in 19 years, become a friendship. Saul had, a long time ago, helped Vincent out of a thing that could have become a very bad thing, and Vincent had, in the way of Vincent, never forgotten it. They spoke perhaps twice a year. They spoke less now than they had when they were younger. The last time Saul had called Vincent had been 18 months ago, to warn him about a matter that had turned out to be nothing. Vincent had thanked him. Vincent had asked, in that careful low voice of his, whether Saul needed anything. Saul had said no. That had been the end of it. This time, when Saul called at 9 in the morning, Vincent answered on the second ring. "Saul." "Vincent, it's been a while." "It has." "Everything all right?" "I need 10 minutes of the boss's time." A pause. About a thing I'd rather not say on a telephone." "All right. When?" "Today, if I can." Another pause. Vincent, Saul knew, was running a ledger in his head, the way Vincent always ran ledgers. Vincent could tell you the location of any of Adrian Voss's appointments for the next 3 weeks without looking at a book, because Vincent did not keep a book. Books were things other people could steal. 2 o'clock, Vincent said. "The house." "The house is fine." "Saul." "Yes." "You're all right." "I'm all right, Vincent. It's not about me." "All right." They hung up. Vincent stood for a moment in the small monitor room off the back hallway where he had been when the phone rang. He looked at the bank of screens. On one of them, Lila Hart was walking across the solarium with a watering can in her hand. She stopped at a fern by the east-facing glass. She set the can down. She reached up and touched one of the fronds, very lightly, with the back of her finger. The way a person touched a thing they were checking was real. Vincent watched for a moment. Then he went to tell the boss. Adrian was in his office. He looked up when Vincent came in. Vincent, Adrian had long ago learned to read, had a particular way of not quite closing a door behind him when he was bringing something that mattered. Saul Merritt wants 10 minutes. Adrian set down his pen. When? 2. Here. Yes. About. Says he won't say on the phone. Adrian thought for a moment. He did not like Saul Merritt. He had not liked Saul Merritt's father. Saul Merritt was a man who only ever came bearing information, and Adrian had long ago observed that Saul Merritt's information was usually correct and always expensive, and that the expense was not always in money. All right, he said. I'll be in the room. I assumed. Adrian. If Saul is calling us after all this time about a thing he won't name on the phone, I know, Vincent. It's probably about her. I know. Vincent nodded. He did not leave right away. He stood a moment with his hand on the back of the chair. Boss? Yes. I should have caught this. Caught what, Vincent? We haven't heard it yet. Whatever it is. If somebody is still looking, Vincent. Yeah. Go do what you do. Don't apologize for things that haven't happened. Vincent left. Adrian sat at his desk a long moment with the pen still in his hand and did not write. Then he got up and walked out of the east wing and went down the main stairs and crossed the foyer and walked through the back hallway to the solarium, where he had not been in perhaps 3 years. Lila was there. She was watering a plant whose name he did not know. She was wearing the dark blue dress the staff wore in the afternoons, and her hair was pinned back loosely. And when she heard him behind her, she turned without startling, which was new. He noticed it. She had, in the last weeks, stopped startling. Mr. Voss? Miss Hart. Is something... No, I wanted to ask you a question. Yes. When you left Rivermouth, he said, did you tell anyone where you were going? She thought about it. He watched her think. It was, he realized, the way she answered every question now. Not the reflexive denial of a woman who had trained herself to have nothing to say, but the careful consideration of a woman who had decided, at some point recently, to tell the truth to the people in her house. I told the woman at the diner in Mercer, she said. She was the one who took me to the woman in Jerome. I didn't tell her where I was going exactly. I told her I was going south. I don't know if she's still there. What was her name? She said to call her Rita. I don't know if that was her name. What did she look like? 50, maybe older, heavy. A scar here. She touched under her own jaw. From what she said was a dog bite. She had a daughter, a girl about 10. The girl was at the diner after school. I used to... She stopped. I used to help her with her homework when I was waitressing there, just for a few weeks, before I left. A few weeks? 6 weeks, maybe. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly. It was a bad time. That's all right. Why? I'll tell you after 2 o'clock. Mr. Voss? Yes? Is something wrong? He looked at her. He thought for a moment about lying. He could have. He was good at it. He had been good at it, in one form or another, since he was 22 years old and had looked his father's killer in the eye across a long table in a back room of a restaurant on the east side and had told him, straight-faced, that there were no hard feelings. That had been a lie. It had been a long lie. It had ended the way all long lies ended. He was not going to tell her one. I don't know yet, he said. Someone is coming at 2. He says he has something to tell me. I think it is about you. When I know, I will tell you. She nodded. She did not flinch. She did not ask him to let her leave. She turned back to the fern and she watered it, and he watched her for a moment, and he understood. Understood in a way he had not allowed himself to understand until now, and would not, later, admit even to Vincent, that if anything happened to her, he was going to do a thing that would put him somewhere he could not come back from. He went back upstairs. At 2 o'clock, Saul Merritt arrived. He was a small man in a gray coat with the flat eyes of a career insurance adjuster. He was admitted through the side door, walked up the back stairs, and taken into Adrian's office without passing through any of the rooms the staff used in the afternoons. This was by design. Vincent had arranged it with Delaney over lunch. Delaney had nodded once, the way Delaney nodded, and had sent Lila to the 3rd floor to start on the guest rooms, which was a thing that did not need doing, but which was, in Delaney's long experience, The kind of thing a woman did when she needed a woman out of the way without having to tell her she was being kept out of the way. In the office, Saul sat down in the chair on the right, next to the coat, which Adrian had not moved. Saul did not take his own coat off. He laid a brown envelope on his lap. Vincent stood by the door. Adrian. Saul. I won't waste your time. Please don't. Saul opened the envelope. He laid the photograph on the desk. He laid the note beside it. He slid both forward with the flat of his hand until they were an inch from Adrian's side of the desk, and then he sat back and put his hands on his knees, the way a man sat in a waiting room. Adrian looked at the photograph without picking it up. It was Lila. There was no question about it. The coat was different. An older coat, a longer one, not one he had ever seen her wear. Her hair was shorter, she was thinner, but the jawline, the hands, the way she stood in a doorway as if she were about to apologize for being in it, there was no question. Mercer, he said. Yes. When? The photograph was taken roughly 17 months ago. And the note? The note was written shortly after. It sat in a drawer in an office that is not mine, and which I will not name, for most of that time. It came to me 6 days ago. Why do you? Because the man whose office it sat in retired 9 months ago. He died 4 weeks ago. His son inherited his files and did not know what to do with them. His son sent them to the next nearest fixer he knew of, which was me. Retired from what? From handling a particular client. Keller. Yes. Adrian looked at the photograph again. The photograph was taken 17 months ago, he said. Keller has had this for 17 months. No. No? Keller has never seen it. Adrian looked up at him. Explain. The man who took this photograph, Saul said, was working for a private firm in Jerome County. He was contracted by the office I mentioned, which worked for Keller, to look for this woman. The contract was standing. He found her. He took the photograph. He sent it, along with this note, to his employer. His employer put it in a drawer and did not tell Keller about it. Adrian waited. Adrian paused. Keller, Saul said, was a bad client. He paid on time, he paid in cash. He also, occasionally, killed his own employees. His fixer was a cautious man. The fixer had been with Keller's father. The fixer had known Keller since Keller was 12. The fixer knew, by the time that photograph arrived, that if he told Keller the woman had been found, Keller was going to drive to Mercer within 48 hours and do something that would bring the attention of 3 state jurisdictions down on every piece of business the fixer was involved in. So the fixer did not tell Keller. He put the photograph in a drawer. He told his man in Jerome to stop looking. Did he keep looking? Yes. Of course he did. Yes, privately, on his own initiative. He was, apparently, a thorough man. He followed her from Mercer. He lost her for a while. He picked her up again in your city about 4 months ago. He never told anyone. He was, his son told me this morning, planning to use the information as leverage against Keller, if Keller ever became a problem for him personally. The fixer died, as I said, 4 weeks ago. Heart attack. At his desk. And the son? The son is 29. He is not in the business. He is a dentist. He found the file. He did not know what it was. He called me. I gave him a name to send the file to, which was mine. Why? Because I owed his father a favor from a long time ago, and because I am an old man, Adrian, and I do not want to die with this in my drawer. Adrian was quiet. Does anyone else know? The son. Me. And whichever one of the fixer's other employees found out, which I cannot guarantee is none of them. Keller. Keller, as I understand it, is in a private clinic. He does not know this information exists. His people have been quiet since your people visited him. I do not think he will be a problem in the short term. He will be a problem eventually. Men like Keller are always a problem eventually, but he does not presently know the woman is here. And this photograph is the only copy of this particular photograph that I am aware of. Adrian picked it up. He looked at it a long moment. Then he held it over the lighter on his desk, flicked the lighter, and watched the corner of the photograph curl and catch. He held it until he could not hold it anymore, and then he dropped it in the small brass ashtray to his left and watched it burn down to a dark curl of nothing. The note he did not burn. The note he folded carefully and put in the drawer. Saul. Yes. Thank you. You're welcome. What do you want for this? Saul looked at him. I want, Saul said, not to be called again, by you or by anyone in your house, ever. Adrian nodded slowly. All right. I'm not saying it unkindly, Adrian. I am saying it because I am 61 years old, and I would like to spend the rest of my life at my sister's place in the Lake Country. I do not want to be on anybody's list. Not yours, not Keller's, not the dentist's. I would like, from this moment forward, to be forgotten. Done. Thank you. Saul. Yes. The son, the dentist. I have already arranged with him, Saul said, that he is going to take a long vacation, a very long one. He is not a smart young man, but he is a frightened one, and frightened is sometimes more useful than smart. He will not be a problem. All right? Goodbye, Adrian. Goodbye, Saul. Saul stood. He put the empty envelope in his pocket. He walked to the door. Vincent opened it for him. In the doorway, Saul stopped and without turning said, She's a young woman. Yes. Don't make her the next thing you collect, Adrian. Adrian did not answer. Saul walked out. Vincent closed the door behind him. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Boss. I know what he said, Vincent. All right. He's not wrong. I've thought about it. All right. I'm still going to tell her. About the photograph. Yes. All of it. All of it. Vincent nodded. He had not expected otherwise. He had known Adrian, as he had said more than once to Elena over the long years of their working together, half his life. Adrian Voss did many things. Adrian Voss did not, as a rule, lie to women who trusted him, because Adrian Voss had never, as a rule, been trusted by women. The situation, Vincent had been noting for some weeks now, was not as a rule. I'll get her. Thank you. Vincent went down. He found Lila on the third floor, making up the guest bed in the blue room. She looked up when she heard him in the doorway, and Vincent watched the small, familiar tightening pass across her face, and then relax, the way it had started doing when she heard him now. A reflex that had not yet died, and a deliberate softening of it that had. He liked her for that. Vincent Morel, who had spent 16 years watching men be either afraid or unafraid of him, had observed that the most interesting human beings in the world were the ones who kept being afraid and went ahead anyway. Miss Hart? Vincent. Boss would like to see you. Yes. It's all right, he said before she asked. He's not angry. All right. She came down the stairs with her hands folded at her waist, the way she walked now when she did not know what she was walking toward. Vincent opened the door for her. He did not follow her in. Adrian was standing at the window. Lila closed the door behind her. Mr. Voss? Lila. She did not sit. She waited. Come here, please. She crossed the room. She stopped a step from the desk. He turned from the window. He looked at her, and she could see, for the first time since she had known him, that he had something in his face he did not want to have. A man came here this afternoon, he said. A man named Saul Merritt. I don't know him well. I don't like him. But I have known him long enough to believe him when he tells me something. All right. He had a photograph. She did not speak. Her face did the closing thing. Adrian watched it close and did not flinch from it. Of you. Yes. Taken 17 months ago, in Mercer, outside the diner. She exhaled once, slow. Who? A man who was working for Ronan Keller's, for a man who used to work for Keller. He was a fixer. He died 4 weeks ago. The photograph came to Saul through the fixer's son, who found it in the fixer's files and didn't know what to do with it. Saul brought it to me this afternoon. He says the fixer never told Keller. He says the only other person who knew was the fixer himself and his son, and possibly one or two of his employees, and he says he believes, and I believe him, Lila, that none of those people are, at this moment, a threat to you. He let that settle. I burned the photograph, he said, in front of him, before he left this office. It is gone. Her hands, folded at her waist, loosened, then tightened, then loosened again. Is there another? Saul does not believe so. He could be wrong. He has been right, in my experience, on matters of this kind roughly 90% of the time. I am not going to tell you that this is finished. I am going to tell you that the immediate threat, the one we thought had ended, was never a separate thread from Keller. And Keller, at the moment, is in a private clinic and does not know anything. The man who is looking for you has been dead for 4 weeks. His files have been handled. As far as I can establish, your name, your old name, is at this moment inside the head of 4 people on this earth. You, me, Vincent, and an unqualified dentist in Jerome County who has been advised by Saul to take a very long vacation. She sat down in the leather chair because her legs had decided, without consulting her, that they were finished standing. Mr. Voss? Adrian. Adrian. He came around the desk. He did not sit across from her this time. He crouched, the way he had in the library the first night when he had picked up her dropped cloth, so that his face was level with hers, not above it. He did not touch her. He kept his hands on his own knees. I am telling you this, he said, because I promised you I would not lie to you, even about things that are over, even about things I have already handled. I am telling you because if you want to leave, if any part of this, any part of still being afraid, any part of not wanting to live in a house where men with envelopes walk into the office above you, is too much, I want you to be telling me no from a position of full information. All right? I want you to hear me on this. I hear you. Do you want to go? She looked at him. She thought, really thought, about it. She thought about the photograph. She thought about the man in Mercer in the car outside the diner, and the woman named Rita with the scar under her jaw, and the daughter who had been 10. She thought about the long road south in the night, the 3 houses before this one, the bed at the shelter in Jerome where she had slept with a chair under the doorknob for 16 nights before anyone had come to tell her she could stop. She thought about her knife under her pillow 2 floors below. She thought about the lamp in the solarium at 8 in the morning. She thought about Vincent's hand on a doorway and Delaney's crisp knuckle tap in the hall and Elena cursing at a sauce in 2 languages. She thought about this man, crouched in front of her in a $5,000 suit with his hands on his own knees, waiting for her answer the way a man who had decided not to lie waits for an answer he does not get to choose. No, she said. All right. I don't want to go. All right. Adrian. Yes. Will you sit, please? He sat. He sat on the arm of the other chair so that he was still close but no longer crouched. He put his hands loose between his knees. He did not look away from her. I have been afraid, she said, for a very long time. I don't know how to stop. I don't think I can stop, all at once. I think the way a person stops being afraid is the way a person stops being anything else. Slowly, in little pieces, with practice. And I have not practiced. You can practice here. I know. I won't. I know. All right. Adrian? Yes. I am going to say something. I'm going to say it once, and then I would like us not to talk about it for a while because I do not know how to talk about it yet. All right. I don't know what I feel. Okay. But I know I don't feel nothing. She did not look at him. She looked at her own hands in her lap. Adrian on the arm of the chair did not move. He breathed in slow. He breathed out slow. He said nothing for a long time. Then he said, very quiet, Okay, Layla. Okay. We don't have to talk about it. Thank you. Thank you. She looked up. His face was doing something she had not yet seen it do. Not the closed thing, not the reading thing, something open and startled and tired and very young. She realized, with a small, surprised pang, that she had no idea what Adrian Voss's face had looked like when he was 24. She realized, further, that she would have liked to have seen it. She stood up. She smoothed her apron. She walked to the door. She put her hand on the knob. Adrian. Yes. I'd like... She stopped. She tried again. If I came down to the library some evenings. Not to work, just to sit. Yes. Would that be... Yes, Lila. All right. Any evening. All right. Any evening you like. She let herself out. In the hallway, Vincent was leaning on the wall with his arms crossed. He did not say anything. He did not move. He nodded at her, once, and she nodded back, once, and she walked down the corridor with her hand trailing the wall the way she had the last time, and Vincent watched her go, and when she was out of sight, he pushed off the wall and went back into the office. Boss? Vincent. So I'll give you anything else. No. The name of the fixer's man, the one who followed her here. He didn't offer. You didn't ask. I didn't ask. Want me to find out? Yes. Want me to do anything about him? Not yet. All right. Vincent stood a moment. She said okay. She said she'd come down some evenings. All right. Vincent? Yeah. Don't make a thing of it. I wasn't going to, boss. Yes, you were. Vincent smiled, very small, the way he only ever smiled. One side of his mouth, for a second, and then gone. He left. Adrian stood alone in his office. He looked at the drawer where the note was folded. He did not take it out. He walked to the window. He looked out at the drive, the gate, the gray low smear of Ashmont below the hill. He thought about the dentist in Jerome County. He thought about the fixer's other employees. He thought about the photograph he had burned, and the way a photograph was never, in his experience, the only photograph. He thought about Saul Merritt at the door saying, "Don't make her the next thing you collect." And he thought, briefly, about what it would mean to be the kind of man who deserved a woman coming down to his library in the evening just to sit. And he understood that he was not, yet, that man, and that he would perhaps never be, and that he would spend the rest of his life, however long or short it turned out to be, trying. He picked up the phone. Marco. Adrian. Do something for me. There's a dentist in Jerome County. He is about to take a very long vacation. I want you to make sure he takes it. I want you to make sure nothing follows him. I want you to make sure nothing ever comes to this city from that dentist's office. And I want you to do it gently. No one gets hurt unless they have done something that requires it. Am I clear? Always. Thank you, Marco. Adrian. Yes. You all right? Adrian looked out the window. The clouds over Ashmont were breaking again. A thin line of afternoon sun had found the river, and for a moment the whole black ribbon of it looked like a blade. I'm all right, Marco. All right. He hung up. Down in the kitchen, 2 floors below and 1 hallway over, Lila Hart was sitting at the staff table, alone, with a cup of tea Elena had put in front of her without comment. She held the cup with both hands. She did not drink from it. She was, if anyone had asked her, trying to practice, in very small pieces in the way she had told him, the particular exercise of not being afraid. And she was finding, to her surprise, that the first piece of it was not courage. The first piece of it was breathing. She breathed in. She breathed out. Elena, at the stove, did not look over. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, a crow landed on the sill of the solarium and walked, unhurried, along the length of it, and flew off. She drank the tea. It was still warm. The first evening she went down to the library, she almost didn't. She stood at the top of the service stairs for 11 minutes, according to the clock in the hallway, and 3 times she turned around to go back to her room. What finally moved her, in the end, was not courage. It was something smaller and more embarrassing. It was the memory of Adrian's face when he had said, "Any evening you like," and the understanding that if she did not go down at least once, he would spend every evening for the rest of his life listening for a footstep on the stairs that wasn't coming, and she did not want to be the cause of a man listening for nothing. She went down. The library door was open. He was at the desk, not the window. She saw it once, and it undid something small and tender in her, moved one of the leather chairs from in front of the desk around to the side of the room by the fireplace, where a small side table had appeared that had not been there before. On the table was a book, face down, and a pot of tea, and 2 cups. Only 2. He did not look up when she came in. He was reading something on the desk, and he said, without lifting his head, "The chair's for you, if you want it." All right. She sat. She did not know what to do with her hands. She put them in her lap. She looked at the fire. It was a small fire. He had built it himself, she thought. It had the uneven look of a fire a man made when he was doing a thing he had not done in a long time. And for some reason, this was the thing that finally let her breathe. They did not speak for almost an hour. She poured herself tea at some point. He poured his own at another. Once, he stood up to add a log to the fire, and she watched his hands, which were good hands, and the scar on his knuckle, and the careful way he set the log down without throwing sparks. And then he sat back at the desk without looking at her, and she understood. with a small, hard gratitude that caught in her throat, that he was leaving her alone on purpose. He was letting her be in the room with him without being looked at. It was, she thought, possibly the kindest thing a man had ever done for her, and he had not said a word. When the clock on the mantel chimed 10, she stood up. "Good night, Mr. Voss." He looked up then. His face did the thing that was not quite a smile. "Good night, Miss Hart." She walked to the door. She stopped. "Adrian?" "Yes." "The tea was good. Delaney made it. I told her I had a headache." "Oh." She knew I was lying. "Yes, Delaney always knows." "I know." She left. In the hallway she laughed, once, very quietly, under her breath, in a way she had not laughed in 4 years, and she put her hand over her mouth as if she were afraid the laugh would escape and be heard by someone who would take it from her. She came down the next evening, and the one after, and the one after that. By the end of the second week they were speaking, not much, little things. She told him one night that the crow that had gotten into the solarium had come back and had sat on the sill for a long time looking in, and that she had begun putting bread out for it because she had read somewhere that crows remembered faces. He asked if she wanted the crow to remember her, and she said she didn't know, which was honest. He asked what she would name it if she named it, and she said Harold, and he said, "Why Harold?" And she said, "It looks like a herald," and he laughed. It was the first time she had heard him laugh. It came out of him startled and reluctant, like he was as surprised by it as she was, and he looked at her after and said, "Jesus, Lila," and she smiled, and he put his hand over his face for a second, and the fire made the small popping sound a fire makes when a sap pocket gives up, and she thought, this is what it feels like. This is what the years I don't remember were supposed to feel like. He told her things too, in pieces. He told her one night about his brother, who had opened the club 8 years ago, and had been killed 4 years later in an alley behind a restaurant on the south side by a man Adrian had found and killed 3 weeks later in a parking lot in the next county, and which he had not said out loud to another person since the night it happened. He told her, another night, about his father, who had been buried in a cheap suit at a cheap cemetery on the wrong side of the river, because that was what his father had asked for in the only letter he had left behind, and that he had never been back to the cemetery, and that he did not know, himself, why. She did not say anything to either story. She sat with the tea in her hands and she let him talk, and when he was done, she said only, softly, once, "Thank you for telling me." And he looked at her for a long moment across the firelight and nodded, and they did not speak about either thing again. She told him, in return, small things. She told him the shape of her mother's hands, which had been the shape of a washerwoman's hands, and about the smell of the wool mill where her mother had worked, which had smelled of lanolin and wet cigarettes, and about the particular way the light came through a kitchen window in a town she did not name, at a particular hour, when she was a very small girl, and the curtains would fill up with it, and her mother would stand at the sink with her back to her, and Lila would think her mother was the most beautiful thing in the world and would be afraid, somehow, for her. She told him about the first time she had met Ronan Keller, when she was 19 and he was 32, and she had been working in a bakery in a town she also did not name, and about the particular practice charm he had had, which she had not at 19 known was a practice. She did not tell him about what came after. She did not have to. He did not ask. One night in the 3rd week, he asked her, carefully, the way he asked anything that mattered, if she would like to walk in the garden with him in the afternoons. It would be, he said, a short walk, only the back garden. Vincent would be on the west terrace. She could say no. She could say it now. She could say it halfway through. She could say it any time she wanted. She said yes. The first afternoon they walked in silence for 15 minutes. She kept 3 feet of space between them. He did not close it. On the way back to the house, she tripped, just a little, a root, nothing. And he put out a hand to steady her and then withdrew it before she had actually needed it, because she had caught herself, and neither of them spoke about the hand for the rest of the walk, but she thought about it for the rest of the day, and he did too, in his office, looking at a report he was not reading. The second afternoon, she let him walk beside her, only 2 feet between them. The third afternoon, 1 foot. The fourth afternoon, she stopped at the sundial at the center of the garden and put her hand on the stone rim of it and said, without looking at him, "I'd like to go into the city tomorrow." "Into Ashmont?" "Yes." He looked at her. She was not afraid anymore when he looked at her. She did not know exactly when that had stopped. She had not marked the moment. It had gone the way a small headache went, without announcement, without thanks, leaving behind only the memory of having been there. Where? I thought, the club. The one where you saw me. He was quiet a long moment. Why? Because, she said, I have been here for nearly a year, and that night was the first time I remember feeling like a person, and I would like to go back to that night. Not to pretend it didn't happen. To tell it, she stopped. She looked for the word. To tell it thank you. Lila. Adrian. You don't have to practice like that. You can stay in the house. The house is yours. You don't have to. I know. Then why? Because staying in the house because I'm afraid of outside the house, she said, is still being afraid. I don't want to be grateful to be a ghost again. I was a ghost for 4 years. I'd like to practice being not a ghost, and I think I have to do it in the place I first felt it. He looked at her for a long moment. All right. Thank you. I'll drive you. All right. Vincent will come. I assumed. And Lila. Yes. I won't hover. I will be in the room. You will not have to see me unless you want to. I know. Thank you. They went the next night. She did not wear the dark blue dress. She did not wear the uniform. Delaney, of all people, who had not been told about any of it, and who did not need to be told about any of it, because Delaney, as Lila had long ago understood, knew everything in the house without anyone telling her anything, had come to her door in the afternoon with a dress in her arms that Lila had never seen before. It was simple. It was dark green. It was the color of pine at the bottom of a winter. Delaney had held it up without a word. Mrs. Delaney. It was my sister's, Delaney had said. She wore it once. She didn't have much use for pretty things. She died the year I came to this house. I have been keeping it, I don't know why, for someone. I would like to think I have been keeping it for you. Mrs. Delaney, don't thank me, girl, just put it on. Lila had put it on. It had fit. Delaney had stood at the door a long moment in her apron, with her iron-colored hair pulled back, and she had nodded once, crisp, the way she nodded at anything, and she had said, You look like something. Go on. Go be it. And then Delaney had gone back downstairs, and Lila had stood at her small mirror in the small dress and looked at her own face, her gray eyes, her mother's jaw, her thin mouth, the pale comma-shaped scar on the back of her left wrist, and she had thought very quietly, All right then. The club was quieter on a Thursday than it had been the afternoon she had first walked into it. The floor was not crowded. The lights were low and gold instead of pink. A jazz quartet was playing in the corner on a small raised platform, not the house band she had heard the first time, and the singer, a woman in her 50s, black, in a wine-colored dress, was singing the kind of song that made people stop talking without being asked. Adrian took her through the back entrance. She had not realized the back entrance existed. It opened into a short private hallway that ran along the side of the main room, with a door at the far end that let you out, if you wanted, directly onto the floor, and another door halfway down that let you into a booth set high enough above the floor that you could see the whole room without being seen from it. Adrian stopped in the booth. This is where I sit, he said, when I come here, which is not often. All right. You can sit with me if you want. Adrian. Yes. I'd like to go down on the floor. All right. I'd like to go down by myself first. He looked at her. His face did a small, complicated thing. Not reluctance exactly, and not fear, because Adrian Voss did not wear fear on his face the way other men did, but something adjacent to both, something she recognized, with a small start, as the particular expression of a person who loves another person and is being asked to step back. All right, he said. Vincent will be at the end of the bar. He won't come to you. You look at him if you need him. All right. Go. She went. She walked out of the booth and down the short, private hallway and through the door onto the floor, and the noise rose up around her, so not a crowd's noise, a room's noise. The low, shifting murmur of people talking and glasses clinking and the singer holding a long, sweet note above all of it. And she stopped, for a moment, at the edge of the polished wood, and she let it move through her. She was not, she realized, afraid. She was something else. She was, and the word, when it came, made her eyes sting. Present. She was in a room, in a body, in a dress a woman she had never met had kept for her, in a city she had almost left, and she was standing upright, and no one in the room was looking for her, and no one in the room was looking at her, and no one in the room was going to hurt her, and she was in it. She was in her own life. She walked to the bar. She ordered a glass of wine, not because she wanted wine, but because she had never once in her life walked up to a bar and ordered a thing for herself, and it occurred to her that she would like to know what it felt like. The bartender, a young man with a beard who did not know who she was, poured her the wine and charged her $14. She did not have $14. Vincent, at the end of the bar, handed the bartender a 20 without looking up from his own drink. She caught his eye. He did not quite smile, but he did a small thing with his shoulders that was his version of smiling, and she mouthed, "Thank you," and he mouthed, "Don't mention it." And she stood at the bar with her glass of wine in her hand and listened to the singer finish her song. When the song ended, the applause came up from the floor. Lila clapped too, because everyone else was clapping. The singer bowed slightly. The quartet started something slow and old. A couple started to dance. "You came back." She turned. The woman at her elbow was one of the three who had pulled her in off the street that afternoon 11 months and a week ago. The birthday girl. Lila remembered her now, late 30s, dark hair, a loud laugh, a tattoo of a swallow on the inside of her right wrist. She was not drunk this time. She was holding a club soda. She was looking at Lila with the small, genuinely pleased face of a person who had not expected to see a stranger twice. "Hi." "Hi. You came back." "I came back." I'm sorry, I can't remember if I ever got your name." "Leela." "Mara." "Mara. Hi." "You look different." "I am different," Mara laughed. "Well, welcome." She touched Lila's elbow, very lightly, and moved on toward her friends at a table across the floor, and Lila stood at the bar with her glass of wine, and she watched Mara go, and she thought, "I am going to be all right. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I am going to be all right." She finished the wine. She turned. She looked up at the booth above the floor. Adrian was standing there at the rail with his hands loose on it, watching her. He was not pretending to be doing anything else. He was just watching her. His face in the low light had the look it sometimes had when he did not know he was being looked at, tired and open and very young. When he saw her looking, he did not smile, and he did not wave. He simply tilted his head slightly in her direction. An acknowledgement, a courtesy, a not hovering. She nodded back. She'd walked to the stairs at the end of the bar. She went up. The booth was empty except for him. He had stepped back from the rail when he saw her coming. He stood with his hands in his pockets in the way of a man who did not know what to do with them. "Hi." I ordered wine." "I saw." "Vincent paid." "I saw that too." "I'll pay him back." "No, you won't." "I will, Adrian." "All right, you will." She sat down on the small leather bench that ran along the back of the booth. She patted the seat next to her. He sat. Not close. A careful hand's breadth between them. On the floor below, the singer had started a new song, something in Spanish Lila did not understand, slow and long, with the quartet carrying her softly underneath. "Adrian?" "Yes. Thank you." "For what?" "All of it." He did not answer for a long time. "Lila." "Yes." "I have to tell you something." "All right. I am in love with you." She looked at her hands. "I know," she said. "I have been for, I don't know how long. Some time. Longer than I have let myself admit." "I know that too. I am not telling you because I want anything. I am telling you because I did not want another day to go by with you not knowing and me knowing. I promised I wouldn't lie to you, and I have been, not lying but not telling, and those are different things, but they are close enough to the same thing that I have started to feel bad about it." "All right. I will not." "Adrian." "Yes." "Stop telling me what you won't do." "All right. I'm not afraid of what you will do." He looked at her. "I have been," she said, "in the last 3 weeks. I've been asking myself what I feel, not because I owe you an answer, because I wanted to know, myself. For me, I have not known what I feel about anything in a long time. I have not let myself know. It turns out, she stopped. She breathed. It turns out that the way you figure out what you feel is that you sit in a room every night with a man who doesn't ask you what you feel. I did not know that. No one ever told me that. Lila, let me finish. All right. I'm not somebody who can say big things yet, Adrian. I don't know if I ever will be. I have been practicing small things. I am trying. But I want you to know that when I come down to the library at night, I am not coming down because I am afraid to be in my room alone. I stopped being afraid to be in my room alone weeks ago. I come down because in all the world, the place I want to be at night is the room you are in. He did not speak. She looked at him then. His face was not doing any of the things she had catalogued. It was doing a new thing, a thing she would, over the coming years, come to recognize and never get tired of, which was the particular expression of a man who had been told a thing he had not let himself believe could be told to him. "Is that all right?" she said. "Yes. I thought it would be." "Yes, Lila." "All right." Below them, the singer held a long note and let it fall. The quartet went quiet. The applause rose. A glass broke somewhere on the far side of the room, and someone laughed and someone else cursed amiably, and the noise of the bar folded back over the singer and the quartet, and the two of them in the booth, and Adrian Voss, who had not in 16 years held another person's hand in public, put his hand down flat on the leather bench between them, palm up, and waited. Lila looked at the hand for a long moment, then she put hers in it. His fingers closed around hers slowly, carefully, the way a man closes a door he does not want to slam. He did not look at her. She did not look at him. They sat there with their hands joined on the bench and looked out at the floor, and no one on the floor looked up, and no one on the floor knew, and for a long, quiet stretch of a song she did not understand the words to Lila Hart, who had been Anna Keller, and who was now something else, something she still did not have a name for, and which she was learning, slowly, was fine, was the whole point. Sat in a booth above a room full of strangers with her hand in the hand of a man she had walked toward instead of away from, and she thought, very simply, of her mother at a kitchen sink, and of a dress a stranger had kept for her, and of a crow on a sill, and of the way a person stops being afraid, not all at once, not by being saved, but by being seen, and by letting herself, after a long time of not, be seen back. She did not cry. She had done enough of that. She breathed in. She breathed out. She squeezed his hand once. He squeezed back. They stayed in the booth until the quartet finished their set. They walked out the back door when it was over. Vincent drove. The car was quiet. The city at 1 in the morning was quiet too, the river black, the bridges strung with their orange lights, the warehouses on Calder Street dark except for the 2 small windows that were always on. The gate of the Voss estate opened for them. It closed behind them. They did not speak on the ride up the hill. When they reached the front of the house, Adrian got out and went around and opened her door before she could do it herself. She stepped out. She looked at him. "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Lila. I'll come down tomorrow." "I know." She went upstairs. She took off the dress. She hung it carefully over the back of the chair. She lay down in her narrow bed. She reached under the pillow, out of long habit, and her hand found the knife, and she thought about it for a long moment, her fingers resting on the handle, and then she took it out and laid it on the nightstand, on top of a folded handkerchief, where it stayed. In the morning, she did not put it back. The weeks that followed moved the way weeks move in a house where nothing, for the first time in a long time, is breaking. Saul Merritt did not call again. The dentist in Jerome County took his long vacation and did not come back, and eventually, after some months, sent a postcard from a town near the border with a different country, which Vincent read and burned in an ashtray in his office without reporting to anyone. Ronan Keller was moved, eventually, from the private clinic to a long-term care facility in Rivermouth, where he developed an infection that did not, in the end, kill him, but which left him dependent on a woman he paid to feed him who did not like him and did not, as far as anyone could determine, ever say a full sentence to him in the 4 years before he finally died, quietly, of pneumonia, in a bed that was not his own. No one at the Voss estate was ever told about it. Adrian, when Vincent told him, nodded once and said all right, and did not mention it again. He did not tell Lila. She did not ask. There came a point, as the months went by, when she understood, without anyone having to say it to her, that Ronan Keller had stopped existing in the part of her life that was her life now, and that asking after him would be a kind of reaching back into a house she had walked out of, and she did not want to reach back. She reached forward. In the spring, she moved out of the small room on the third floor not far, only into one of the guest rooms on the second, a room she had chosen herself, facing east so the morning light came in, which Delaney, without being asked, had redecorated by throwing out the tasseled lamp on the side table and putting in its place a simple one she had bought at a shop in the city for $14. In the summer, Lila stopped wearing the uniform. In the fall, she started working at a small community organization in the city that helped women leaving bad houses. Not as a volunteer, because the woman who ran the organization, whose name was Camille and who was 68 and had been doing the work for 30 years, had taken one look at Lila on the day of her interview and said, "Honey, you are going to be paid. This is not a place we ask women to work for free," and had hired her at a wage that was neither generous nor insulting. She drove herself there. Adrian had bought her a car. She had refused it 3 times and accepted it the 4th, on the condition that she pay him back from her own wages, which she did over 19 months, in envelopes of cash she left on his desk on the 1st of every month. He never moved the envelopes. He cashed them. He put the money in an account he did not tell her about, and which, 7 years later, when she needed it for something else, he would give her back without comment. She slept in her own room for a long time. Then, one night in the winter of the 2nd year, she did not. That was its own story. It is not this one. It is enough to say that it happened without hurry and without pressure, and without either of them saying more than was needed, and that afterwards, lying in the dark in the east wing of a house she had once cleaned the banisters of, she put her head on his shoulder and he put his hand on her hair, and neither of them spoke for a long time. And when she finally did speak, what she said was Adrian, and what he said was yes, and that was the whole conversation. They were married in the 4th year in a small civil ceremony in the front parlor of the house, officiated by a judge who had known Adrian's father and who had owed him, 30 years earlier, a debt that had, in the way of certain Ashmont debts, been forgiven but not forgotten. Delaney wore a hat. Elena cried through the whole thing and pretended afterward that she had not. Vincent stood at the back of the room in a suit that was too tight across the shoulders and did not speak to anyone for 4 hours, which was his way of being emotional. Mara from the club came. She and Lila had become friends in a slow, unhurried way over coffees in the city, and brought a bottle of champagne so expensive Adrian laughed out loud when he saw it, a real laugh this time, not the startled one from the library, and Vincent, from the back of the room, shook his head with one side of his mouth doing his small smile because he had known Adrian Voss for 20 years, and he could count on one hand the number of times he had heard him laugh without surprising himself. There was no honeymoon. Lila had asked for none. She had said, in the quiet way she said everything that mattered, that she had been away from this house for most of the years before she'd known it, and that she had no interest in going anywhere else for a while. Adrian had said all right. He had said for how long, Lila, and she had said, I'll tell you when I'm ready, and he had said all right again. And that had been the end of the honeymoon discussion. They stayed. They lived. They lived ordinary days in a house that had not been ordinary for a very long time, and the house slowly, over the course of years, became ordinary, which was a thing Mrs. Delaney had not known she had been waiting for until it happened, and which she announced one morning by retiring, with no warning, on a Tuesday, over breakfast, and moving into a cottage Adrian had bought for her in a village 2 hours north, where she lived for another 11 years and died, eventually, in her sleep, of old age, with her sister's dress no longer in her closet because it was by then in Lila's. Lila kept working. She worked at Camille's organization for the rest of Camille's life, and then she ran it. She did not run it the way Camille had run it. She ran it differently. She ran it as a woman who had been the woman it served, which was a thing Camille had not been, and which Camille in her last year had said was the reason she was giving it to Lila and not to any of the other women who had expected to get it. Lila did not tell her own story to the women who came to the organization. She did not have to. She had found, over the long years, that it was usually enough for her to sit in a room across from a woman and not look away. Women who had been where she had been, she had come to understand, could tell. It was a thing in the eyes. It was a thing in the hands. You did not need to say it, and the saying of it, when it was not asked for, was often more for the sayer than the hearer. She let them talk. She did not hurry them. She did not tell them everything would be all right, because she did not know that it would be. And she had promised a man once, in a library with a fire in it, that she would not lie to him, and she had extended over time that promise to everyone else in her life. She had become, without planning to, a woman who did not lie. Adrian, meanwhile, became, in the slow, unshowy way of a man rebuilding a house he has lived in all his life, something close to the man he had been trying, all those years, to be. He did not stop being what he was. He did not close the warehouses on Calder Street, because closing them would have put 300 men out of work, and 300 men out of work was a specific harm, and Adrian Voss had come to be careful about specific harms. He did not open the club more often than he had. He did not go into the city more often than he had. He did not become, in the way stories sometimes end, a changed man. He became, which is different, a man who was tired of being unchanged, and who went to bed beside a woman who did not flinch when he put a hand on her hair, and who woke beside her in the morning, and who, when he looked at her across the long table at dinner, and she looked back, felt, briefly, every night, the way he had felt for 30 seconds in a booth above a jazz quartet, which was the feeling of being seen by a person who had decided freely to see him. He lived another 31 years. They did not have children. They talked about it once in the second year and decided, together, without a fight, without regret, that they did not need to. They had instead Vincent, who grew old in his own wing of the house and refused, to the end of his life, to move into a smaller cottage like Delaney had. Elena, who cooked for them until her hands gave out, and then sat in the kitchen and directed other women who cooked for them, and who died on a Sunday morning with her hand on a wooden spoon. And an assortment of women and girls, year after year, who came through Lila's organization and sometimes, in their worst weeks, came out to the house for a few days and slept in the blue room on the third floor, and ate Elena's cooking, and walked in the back garden with Vincent at a distance on the west terrace, and went back into their lives, a little steadier, because of it. The crow, whose name was Harold, lived on the sill of the solarium for 11 winters. Lila, in the evenings of her old age, would sometimes sit in the library in the leather chair that had, in her first year in the house, been moved to the side of the room by the fireplace, and she would remember, not with pain, not with bitterness, but with a clear, unsentimental fondness, the girl she had been when she first sat in that chair, with her hands folded in her lap, afraid to pick up the tea. She would remember the way the fire had sounded when a sap pocket gave up, and the way Adrian had laughed the first time he laughed, and the way Vincent had put a 20 on the bar without looking up. She would remember the dress and the scar on her wrist, which was still there, and which she had stopped at some point in the 30th year, turning her hand over to not see. She would remember the knife on the nightstand and the morning she had not put it back, and she would think, and this was the thought, in the end, that she carried with her longest, and which, years later, when she told it to a young woman sitting across from her in a small office in the city, changed that young woman's life in a way the young woman could not then have named. She would think that the shape of a life was not, as she had been taught, determined by what was done to you. It was determined by who, at some point along the way, looked at you and did not look away, and by whether you, when it was finally your turn, when the door finally opened, when someone finally crouched down to the level of your face and waited, were willing to look back. She looked back. That was the whole story. That was the part that mattered. Outside in Ashmont, the rain went on being the rain, and the river went on being the river, and the lights on the bridges went on being strung like beads on a wire over the slow black water. And somewhere in the city a woman was, at that very moment, standing in the doorway of a house she did not want to walk back into. And somewhere else in the city, a door was being opened for her by someone she did not yet know. And the story, in that small and ordinary way, was going on without them, as it always had, as it always would, one seen person at a time.